They threw her away like she was nothing. They laughed behind silk napkins while the man who'd promised her forever slipped a ring onto her best friend's finger. Isabella Cruz walked into that Chicago ballroom as a ghost of the girl she used to be, and walked out into the arms of the most dangerous man in the city. What happened next turned a wedding into a funeral for everyone who ever made her feel small. If you stay until the end of this story, you'll see exactly how a woman with nothing became a queen with everything. Drop a like, and tell me in the comments what city you're watching from right now so I can see how far this story travels tonight. Let's begin. The first thing Isabella Cruz noticed when she walked into the Whitmore Grand Ballroom was that nobody looked at her. Not the valet who took her coat without meeting her eyes. Not the woman at the guest registry who checked her name twice, as if the letters didn't quite belong on the list. Not the two bridesmaids in champagne silk who brushed past her shoulder with the careful indifference of people trained from birth to recognize who mattered and who didn't. She mattered less than the flowers. The flowers, she noticed, were white peonies, thousands of them. They climbed the marble pillars spilled from crystal bowls the size of small children, hung from the vaulted ceiling in garlands so dense the chandeliers looked like they were drowning in cream. Daniel had told her once, on a Tuesday night in bed, that he hated peonies. Too soft, he'd said. Too girly. His mother's favorite, and his mother was a woman who could sour milk with a glance. Now here they were, filling the room like a funeral. His favorite, apparently. Or Camille's. Funny how tastes changed when the bride did. "Champagne, miss?" Isabella startled. The waiter was young, maybe 22, with the kind of pale face that suggested he hadn't seen sunlight in a year. He held out a silver tray. She took a flute because her hands needed something to do besides shake. "Thank you. Ceremony's starting in 15 minutes. Seating is just through those doors." "I know where it is." He blinked. Something flickered across his face. Not recognition exactly, but the quick professional calculation of a man who'd been told to watch for trouble. Isabella could guess what he'd been told. Tall woman, dark hair, green dress. If she causes a scene, find security. She gave him a tight smile and moved on before he could say anything else. The dress had been a mistake. She'd known it the second she zipped it up in her hotel room that morning, but by then it was too late. Deep emerald, cut to the knee, the kind of thing she used to wear when Daniel took her to gallery openings and introduced her as my Isabella, with that proud little smirk. She'd bought it 2 years ago, back when she still believed the life they were building was real. She should have worn black or gray or something that didn't scream, "I'm here and I remember everything." Too late now. She slid into a seat at the back of the chapel, because of course the ceremony was being held in the ballroom's private chapel, a thing Daniel's family apparently owned the way other people owned patio furniture, and tried to become small, invisible. Furniture. It wasn't working. A woman 2 rows ahead of her turned and stared. Thin mouth. Pearls. Isabella recognized her vaguely from some Christmas party 2 winters ago. Marjorie something. Married to a bond trader. The woman's eyes dragged down Isabella's dress, up her throat, and settled on her face with the kind of frank curiosity people usually reserve for car accidents. Then Marjorie leaned sideways and whispered something to the man beside her. He turned too. Isabella took a sip of her champagne. It tasted like pennies. She had not wanted to come. That was the thing she kept reminding herself, the small, hard fact she was holding like a stone in her pocket. She had not wanted to come. The invitation had arrived 6 weeks ago in a cream envelope so thick it felt like a slap. Camille's handwriting on the front. "Isabella, I hope you'll be there. It would mean so much." As if they were still the girls who'd gotten matching ankle tattoos at 19. As if Camille hadn't spent 18 months sleeping with Daniel before Isabella found out about it. She'd meant to throw it in the trash. She'd meant to text Camille something brutal and final and never think about either of them again. Instead, she'd come. Because some part of her, the stupid, stubborn, proud part, had needed to see it, needed to watch the door close, needed the ending in her own eyes so her brain would stop writing new versions of it in the middle of the night. Now, sitting in the back of a chapel that smelled like too many flowers, she understood she'd made a mistake. You don't go to your own funeral. You don't sit in the pew and watch them lower you into the ground. The music started. Some string quartet doing a tasteful arrangement of a song Isabella didn't recognize. The guests stood. Isabella stood too because her legs did it before her brain could object. And then Camille appeared. She floated down the aisle in a column of white silk that looked like it had been poured onto her body. Her hair was swept up. Her mother was crying. Her father, a banker Isabella had met exactly twice, looked somewhere between proud and exhausted. Camille was smiling the small bridal smile of a woman who had gotten exactly what she wanted, and wanted everyone in the room to know it. Isabella's knuckles went white around the champagne flute. Camille had been her maid of honor. That was the part that still didn't make sense, even now, 2 years out. Camille had been the one who'd held Isabella's hair back in a bar bathroom the night Isabella got engaged. Camille had been the one who helped her pick out the ring with Daniel, pretending, apparently, that she hadn't already been in his bed for 6 months. 6 months. Isabella had done the math so many times it was practically muscle memory. 6 months before the proposal. 12 months after. 18 months of her best friend and her fiancé laughing at her in hotel rooms she was paying half the mortgage on. She found out on a Sunday. A receipt in his coat pocket. 2 entrees at a restaurant in Lincoln Park she'd never been to. She hadn't even been suspicious at first. She'd just been curious. Then she'd called the restaurant to ask if they had a rewards program, and the very nice hostess had said, "Oh, Mr. Marchetti, yes, he comes in often with his wife. Beautiful blonde woman. Is this a surprise?" His wife. Beautiful blonde woman. Isabella was not blonde. She had sat on the kitchen floor for 2 hours after that call. Just sat there, on the tile, with the receipt in her hand and waited to feel something other than cold. By the time Daniel came home, she had already packed. He didn't even try to deny it, which she somehow found worse than the lying. He'd stood in the doorway of their bedroom, her bedroom, the one she'd decorated, the one she'd picked the paint color for, and said, "I was going to tell you." She had laughed. She remembered that. A short, sharp, strange sound. "When?" she'd asked. "After the wedding. I didn't want to hurt you." "You were going to marry me and then leave me." "No, I was going to figure it out. Camille and I—" "Don't." She'd held up a hand. Her voice, she remembered, had been so calm it scared her. "Don't say her name in this house." But he had. And eventually Camille had come over in tears, in a coat Isabella had lent her the winter before, and sat on the couch and said, "I love him, Is. I'm sorry. I love him." As if love were some kind of weather event that had just happened to her, something she could neither predict nor prevent. Isabella had thrown them both out that night, literally. She remembered the satisfying thud of Daniel's garment bag hitting the hallway carpet. She had expected, in the weeks that followed, to feel vindicated, powerful, like a woman who had seen the truth and acted on it. Instead, she had felt small. Smaller, somehow, than she'd been when she hadn't known. Because the thing no one tells you about betrayal, the thing Isabella had learned slowly, painfully over the following 23 months, is that it doesn't just break the person you loved. It breaks the person you used to be. The woman who'd trusted, the woman who'd laughed, the woman who'd stood on a rooftop in Prague and thought, "I am the luckiest woman alive." That woman was dead. A ghost, standing in the back of a chapel, watching her replacement walk down an aisle. The officiant began to speak. Isabella stopped listening. She looked instead at Daniel. He was standing at the altar in a tuxedo that fit him too well, the way expensive clothes always did on him. His hair was shorter than she remembered. He'd lost a little weight. Camille must have put him on one of those diets. She'd always been obsessed with that sort of thing. He looked, Isabella thought, with something like clinical detachment, perfectly content. Not ecstatic, not transformed, just content. Like a man who had ordered exactly what he wanted off the menu and was now waiting for it to arrive. This was the man she had planned her life around. This was the man who had held her while she cried at her grandmother's funeral, who had memorized her coffee order, who had, once, driven 3 hours in a blizzard to bring her soup when she had the flu. This was the man she had believed in the way other people believed in weather. Completely. Unconsciously. Without even knowing that belief was a thing you were doing. And he had traded her for Camille the way you trade in a car. "If anyone here knows of any reason why these two should not be joined," the officiant intoned in the bored voice of a man who had said these words 1,000 times, "let them speak now or forever hold their peace." For one crystalline, terrifying second, Isabella imagined standing up. She imagined the words coming out of her mouth. I have a reason. She imagined the heads turning, the gasps, the delicious, ugly theater of it. But she was not that woman. She had never been that woman. She had been raised by a mother who believed in dignity above all things, a mother who had once told her, "A woman who makes a scene has already lost the fight, mija." So Isabella stayed in her seat. She stayed in her seat and let her champagne go warm in her hand and watched, with dry eyes, as Daniel Marchetti slipped a ring onto Camille Whitfield's finger and kissed her on a mouth Isabella had once thought was her best friend's. The crowd applauded. Someone, a few rows up, whistled. Isabella Cruz set her champagne glass down on the chair beside her, very carefully, and stood up. The reception was in the ballroom. Isabella was not going to the reception. She had told herself the whole flight in from New York that she would go, that she would smile and drink her drink and congratulate them and leave on her own terms, that she would not let them see her flinch. She had lied to herself. She knew that now. She walked fast down the marble corridor, her heels clicking in a rhythm that sounded, to her own ears, like running. The ballroom doors were ahead of her, and beyond them she could hear the dull thrum of a band warming up. Guests were already spilling into the reception area, laughing too loud, the way people do when they're performing Joy for an audience. She passed a cluster of them, 3 women in pastel dresses, one of whom turned and did a small, sharp double take. "Isabella? Oh my God!" Isabella did not stop walking. "Isabella, wait!" The woman's voice was bright with the specific pleasure of someone who has just spotted a scandal in the wild. Isabella recognized her without looking. Vanessa Cole, a cousin of Daniel's or something like that. A woman who had once, at a 4th of July barbecue, told Isabella her accent was so charming. Isabella's accent was Chicago. She'd grown up in Pilsen. Her mother was from Michoacan and her father was from the South Side. And the only thing charming about the way Isabella Cruz talked was that it embarrassed women like Vanessa Cole to hear it. "Isabella, are you leaving?" Vanessa had caught up now, a glass of something pink in her hand. "You can't leave. The reception hasn't even started. Daniel won't notice." "Oh, don't be like that." Vanessa's laugh was pitched to Carrie. 2 other women turned to watch. "He was asking about you, actually. Wasn't he, Gwen? He was asking if you'd come." "That's very kind." Isabella kept walking. Isabella, look, I know this must be hard." Isabella stopped. She turned around slowly and she let Vanessa Cole see her face, really see it, for what might have been the first time. She watched the other woman's smile stutter, watched her take half a step back without meaning to. "Vanessa," Isabella said in a voice that was softer than she felt, "I hope you have a lovely evening." Then she turned and kept walking. Behind her, one of the other women laughed, a small, uncertain laugh, and Vanessa said, loud enough to be overheard, "Well, somebody's taking it hard." Isabella walked faster. The corridor opened into the hotel's main lobby. White marble floors, a fountain, a doorman in a gray coat who held the door for a couple going in the opposite direction. Cold November air spilled in from the street, and she walked straight into it without breaking stride. She didn't have a plan. She didn't have a coat. She'd left it at the coat check, and she was not going back for it. She had her phone, her clutch, a credit card, and the keys to a hotel room 6 blocks east that she had paid for in cash because she hadn't wanted to see Daniel's corporate card on the hotel registry. She would walk back to the hotel. She would take off the dress. She would order room service and drink whatever was most expensive on the menu, and she would not think about Daniel Marchetti ever again. The plan lasted exactly 4 blocks. On the 5th block, somewhere around Wacker, the shaking started. Small at first, just her hands, then her shoulders, then the whole clumsy architecture of her body. She stopped on the sidewalk, under the awning of a shuttered jewelry store, and pressed her back against the cold glass and tried to breathe. It didn't work. What came up instead was a sob, then another. Then a sound so ugly and raw that a man walking his dog across the street actually turned and looked. "Don't," she told herself. "Don't do this here. Don't let them win this too." But she was already doing it. She was crying on a sidewalk in November in an emerald dress she had bought to impress a man who had already decided she wasn't enough. She was crying because she was 29 years old and she had given 6 years to a life that had disappeared like smoke. She was crying because no one in that ballroom was going to ask where she'd gone. No one was going to wonder. No one was going to care. She was alone. She had been alone, she realized, for a very long time. She just hadn't known it. "Excuse me." A voice. Male. Close. Isabella flinched. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, furious, and turned to tell whoever it was to leave her alone. And then she stopped. The man standing in front of her was not a mugger. He was not a well-meaning stranger. He was not, Isabella understood immediately, someone you told to leave you alone. He was tall. Taller than Daniel, taller than most men she'd met. Black coat, black gloves, dark hair graying slightly at the temples, even though he couldn't have been older than 40. His face was handsome the way certain statues were handsome. Carved, severe, absolute. But it was not his face that stopped her. It was his eyes. Gray, steady. Looking at her the way a doctor looks at an X-ray, as if her pain were something he was already calculating the shape of. Behind him, idling at the curb, was a black car the size of a small boat. 2 men stood beside it. They were not looking at her. They were looking, with the practiced casualness of people who were paid to look, at everyone else on the street. "Are you all right?" the man asked. His voice was low. It had an accent she couldn't quite place. Italian, maybe, but smoothed out by decades of English. "I'm fine." Isabella straightened. She tried to make her voice cold. "Thank you. You are not fine." "That's not really any of your business." He tilted his head slightly. Something that was almost a smile, not warm, not unkind, just observed, flickered and disappeared. "You are correct," he said. "Forgive me." He didn't leave. Isabella stared at him. He stared back. A very strange thing happened in her chest, a tightening, a loosening, she couldn't tell which. She had the distinct disorienting sensation that she was being looked at for the first time that entire day. Not glanced at, not scanned for social threat. Looked at. As if she were a real person standing on a real sidewalk, with real pain in her real body. "You came from the Whitmore," the man said. It was not a question. "How did you—" "Your dress, the shoes, the lack of a coat." He nodded toward her bare arms. "And the direction you came from." "A wedding?" "Yes." "Someone's." Isabella laughed. It came out wrong, bitter, watery. "Mine, in a way." He went very still. Not in a startled way, in the way of a man who had just received a piece of information he considered interesting and intended to remember. "Ah," he said. "Ah," Isabella echoed. She wiped her face again. "Look, I don't know who you are, and I appreciate you stopping, but I'd really like to be alone right now." "Of course." He reached into his coat. Isabella's whole body tensed, some animal part of her brain catching up to the strangeness of the situation a full beat later than it should have. But he only produced a handkerchief, white, monogrammed. He held it out to her. She hesitated. "Take it," he said. "You're ruining your makeup." Against her better judgment, she took it. It smelled faintly of something expensive, cedar, maybe, or a cologne she didn't recognize. She dabbed at her eyes. The fabric came away streaked with black. "Thank you." "Keep it." "I couldn't—" "Please." Another one of those almost smiles. "It's only cloth." It was not, she could tell, only cloth. She tucked it into her clutch anyway because arguing seemed beyond her current strength. "Who are you?" she heard herself ask. He considered the question for a second longer than seemed necessary. "My name is Lorenzo Vescari," he said. He said it the way you'd tell someone your name at a dinner party. No flourish, no expectation. But something in the way he said it, or maybe in the way the 2 men by the car had very slightly turned their heads at the sound of it, made Isabella's skin prickle. "I've heard that name," she said before she could stop herself. "Possibly. My father—" She stopped. Her father had been a police officer for 31 years. He had retired 8 years ago. And in all that time, he had only told her a few stories about his work, most of them funny, most of them about drunks in Wrigleyville. But one night, after too much whiskey at Thanksgiving, he had leaned across the table and told her something different. He had told her about a family in Chicago that everyone knew about and nobody talked about. A name he wouldn't repeat out loud. "Those are not men you want to know about, Mija. Those are men you want to live your whole life never having met." She did not remember her father saying the name Vescari. But she remembered the feeling of that conversation, the weight of it. And standing on a sidewalk in November, in front of a man who had appeared out of nowhere and knew how to look at a woman crying without making her feel small, she understood she was standing inside that same weight now. Lorenzo Vescari watched her figure it out. He did not confirm anything. He did not deny anything. He simply watched, with those steady gray eyes, and waited for her to decide what she was going to do about it. "I should go," Isabella said. "Should you?" "Yes." "Where?" She opened her mouth to answer, closed it. The honest answer, "Back to a hotel room where I will lie on the bed and stare at the ceiling and try not to think about the man who is, at this moment, kissing my best friend on a dance floor," felt too humiliating to say aloud. So she said nothing. Lorenzo glanced at the car, then back at her. "Would you like to get out of the cold?" "No." "All right." "I don't even know you." "No." "I don't get into cars with strangers." A wise policy. A gust of wind came down the street, and Isabella shivered so hard her teeth clicked. Lorenzo noticed. She was realizing, the kind of man who noticed everything. He stripped off his coat. "Wait," she started, but he was already draping it over her shoulders. It was heavy. It smelled like cedar and something else. Something darker. Something she couldn't put a word to. It hung on her almost to her calves. He did not touch her in the process. He was very careful not to touch her. "You'll freeze," she said. "I run warm." She did not believe him, but she did not take the coat off either. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. He looked at her for a long moment. The gray eyes were very steady, and something in them had shifted, still distant, but not empty. Almost for a flash of a second, almost wounded. "Because you remind me of someone," he said. "Who?" "Nobody who is here anymore." Isabella did not know what to say to that, so she said nothing. "Come sit in the car," Lorenzo said. "Not to go anywhere, just to be out of the wind. I will sit with you. We will not drive. You have my word." "Your word?" "Yes." "I don't know what your word is worth." "No," he agreed. "You don't. That is fair." She should have said no. Every reasonable voice in her head was saying no. Had been saying no since the moment he'd said his name, had been building to a crescendo of no since she'd realized who or what she was probably standing in front of. She should have turned and walked back to her hotel and called her father in the morning and told him, "Dad, I had the strangest thing happen. You'll never believe it." But the thing about being broken, Isabella realized later, was that the reasonable voices got quieter. Not because you stopped hearing them, but because they stopped mattering. When the life you had carefully built had already been taken from you, the concept of risk became almost funny. What was he going to do? Take away her fiancé? Take away her best friend? Take away her future? It had already been taken. There was nothing left to protect. "Okay," she said. He blinked, just once. She had the sense, very briefly, that she had surprised him. "Okay," he repeated. He walked beside her to the car. The two men, his men obviously, though Isabella still didn't want to think too hard about what that meant, opened the back door without a word. One of them glanced at her, then at Lorenzo, and something passed between them that she couldn't read. The man did not look happy. Lorenzo did not look like he cared. She slid into the back seat. The leather was warm. The inside of the car smelled like the coat. Lorenzo got in beside her, leaving a generous foot of space between them, and pulled the door closed. The engine was not running. The two men stayed outside on the sidewalk, their backs to the car. For a long moment, neither of them said anything. "What's your name?" Lorenzo asked finally. "Isabella." "Isabella," he repeated as if tasting it. "Isabella what?" "Cruz. Isabella Cruz." A small nod. "Tell me what happened tonight, Isabella Cruz." "That's not really—" "I know, but tell me anyway." She looked at him. He was not looking at her. He was looking straight ahead at the back of the empty driver's seat, giving her his profile instead of his gaze, making it easier. She understood without being told that this was deliberate, so she told him. Not all of it. Not the kitchen floor, not the receipt, not the 23 months of waking up at 3 a.m. to the sound of her own crying. But she told him the shape of it. Daniel, Camille, 6 years, 18 months, the wedding, the peonies. Vanessa Cole's Somebody's Taking It Hard. The way she had walked out and not a single person had come after her except a stranger on the sidewalk. Lorenzo listened without interrupting. When she was done, there was a silence that felt less like absence and more like a thing being held. "He will not have a happy marriage," Lorenzo said eventually. "How could you possibly know that?" "Because men who lie to get what they want do not stop lying once they have it. He will lie to her. He will lie to himself. One day, probably not soon, but eventually, she will find out. And she will sit somewhere, alone, the way you did tonight, and she will feel what you felt." He paused. "It is not a kindness to say this. It is only what is true." "That doesn't make me feel better." "No, I imagine not." Another silence. Isabella pulled the coat tighter around her shoulders. She realized with a dull sort of horror that she was starting to feel warm, safe, almost, sitting in a dark car with a man whose name her father would not say out loud. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Yes." "Why did you stop?" He took a long time to answer. "I was driving past," he said finally. "I was on my way somewhere I did not particularly want to go. A dinner. Business. I saw you on the sidewalk, and I told my driver to pull over. I do not usually do that." "Why did you?" "I don't know." "You said I reminded you of someone." "I did say that." "Who?" He looked at her then, fully, for a long moment, and in the dim light of the car's interior, she saw something she hadn't seen in his face before. Something old, something tired. "My wife," he said. "You're married?" "I was." "Oh. She died 4 years ago." "I'm sorry." "So am I." He looked away again. His jaw moved, very slightly. "She had your eyes, not the color. The look. Like someone had set her on fire and she was deciding whether to burn or not." Isabella did not know what to say. "I don't think I'm deciding anything right now," she said eventually. "I think I'm just burning." "Yes, I know. That is what I saw." The silence came back. It was not uncomfortable. Outside, the wind pushed a scrap of paper down the sidewalk. One of Lorenzo's men lit a cigarette, and the orange glow briefly lit the edge of his face. "What do I do now?" Isabella asked. She had not meant to ask it. It came out before she could stop it, small, unguarded, the way you asked a question of a parent when you were small and lost and you had given up pretending you weren't. She hated the sound of it. She wanted to take it back. Lorenzo did not answer for a long time. When he did, his voice was different, quieter, less careful. "Isabella Cruz," he said, "I'm going to tell you something, and I want you to understand that I do not expect you to agree. I do not expect anything from you. What you do with what I say is entirely your choice. Do you understand?" "Yes." "Tonight, you were humiliated, and the people who humiliated you will go home and sleep well. They will wake up tomorrow, and they will eat breakfast, and they will go on with their lives as if you do not exist. That is what people like them do. They move on. They move on quickly because they have never had to do otherwise. Do you understand this?" "Yes." There are 2 ways to live with that. One is to swallow it, to tell yourself it does not matter, to build, slowly, over many years, a life in which their opinion of you becomes a small thing. Many people do this, most people. It is not a bad way to live. And the other way? He turned to look at her. His eyes, in the dim car, looked almost silver. "The other way," he said, "is to walk back into that room and make them afraid." Isabella's breath caught. "I don't," she started. "I don't know what you mean." "I think you do. I can't just... What do you want me to do? Go back there and slap someone? No, I'm not that woman. No, not that." He smiled, just slightly. It was the first real smile she had seen from him, and it was not a nice one. "I'm not talking about a scene. Scenes are for small people. I am talking about power. I don't have any power." "No, but I do." She stared at him. "What are you saying?" "I am saying," Lorenzo Vescari said, very calmly, "that I am going to propose something to you, and I want you to listen to all of it before you answer." "Okay?" "You will almost certainly say no, and that will be the right answer. I want to say that first so you know I am not trying to manipulate you. I am telling you what I would tell my own sister. Say no. Go back to your hotel. Go home. Build a quiet, good life. That is what a reasonable person would do. Okay, but he leaned back slightly. If you do not want to be a reasonable person, if you want instead to walk into that ballroom tomorrow, not tonight, tonight is too soon. Walk into that ballroom tomorrow and watch the faces of the people who humiliated you tonight go gray. If you want that, Isabella Cruz, there is a way. What way? You could marry me. Isabella laughed. It was a real laugh, startled out of her, and for a second it broke the whole strange spell of the evening. The sidewalk, the coat, the car, the dark. For a second he was just a man saying something absurd, and she was just a woman who had heard it. Then she looked at his face, and she stopped laughing. He was not joking. You're serious. I am serious. She shook her head. I don't know you. I met you 40 minutes ago. You can't just... People don't do this. I know. Why would you do this? He looked at her for a long moment. The tiredness was back in his face, the something old, the something wounded, and under it, something else, something she could not quite name yet but would come to understand later over months, in fragments. I told you, he said. You remind me of her. That's not a reason? No, it isn't, but it is the only one I have, and it is the true one. What would you get out of it? Less than you would think. Lorenzo. Listen. He held up a hand. Hear the shape of it before you decide. The marriage would be real on paper. It would not need to be real in private, unless at some point we both decided we wanted it to be. I have no interest in forcing anything. I am not a man who takes things that are not offered. You would have my name, my protection, a home if you wanted one, money if you needed it. And when you walked into a room in this city, every person in that room would understand, within 10 seconds, that you are not a woman they can afford to disrespect, ever again. And in exchange, you would be seen with me. You would stand beside me, in public. That is all. That's not all. No, it isn't. He nodded, as if respecting the question. There are people in my life who believe I should have remarried by now. People who watch my household. A wife, a public wife, settles certain questions. It is useful to me. I am telling you this because I want you to know there is a reason. I am not only offering you charity, you would be doing me a favor as well. What kind of people watch your household? The kind you do not need to worry about. That's not an answer. No, it isn't. She stared at him. Her heart was beating very fast. The coat, which had been warm, now felt heavy. She was aware, suddenly, vividly, of the absurd and total wrongness of this conversation, of the fact that she was a corporate lawyer from Pilsen who had, an hour ago, been watching her ex-fiancé get married and was now being offered a marriage by a man her father would not have let into his home. She should say no. She knew she should say no. I need to think, she said. Of course. I'm not saying yes. I know. I'm not saying no either. I know. He reached into his coat, his inside jacket pocket since the outer coat was on her shoulders, and produced a card, plain black. A phone number in silver, nothing else. He held it out. Think for as long as you want, he said. If the answer is no, which I expect it to be, you never need to call. You will never see me again. Keep the coat. Keep the handkerchief. Go home, Isabella Cruz, and build something quiet. She took the card. And if it's yes? He held her gaze. Then call before noon tomorrow, he said, and we will go to the reception together. She made a sound, half laugh, half something else. Tomorrow? The reception is 2 days of events, I assume. It always is with these people. How do you know that? I know the Marchettis. She stared at him. You know Daniel's family? I know of Daniel's family. There was something in the way he said it, a fine, dry edge, that made her think he knew considerably more than of. She decided not to ask. Before noon, she repeated. Before noon. He reached across her, very carefully, not touching her, and opened her door. The cold came rushing in. Isabella sat there for one more second. She looked at him, at his face, which was tired and serious, and not kind exactly, but not cruel either. At the gray eyes that had looked at her, actually looked at her, for the first time all day. Lorenzo, she said. Yes. Is this a mistake? Almost certainly. For which one of us? He gave her that small, not quite smile again. Time, he said, will tell us. She got out of the car. The two men parted for her without a word. The taller one handed her clutch back. She hadn't even realized she'd set it down on the seat. The car door closed behind her with a soft, expensive thunk. She stood on the sidewalk in a borrowed coat and watched the car pull smoothly away into traffic. It turned at the next light and was gone. Isabella walked the rest of the way back to her hotel in a kind of dream. She did not remember later most of those blocks. What she remembered was the weight of the coat on her shoulders, the smell of cedar, the black card in her clutch, and the feeling, new and strange, that for the first time in 2 years she was standing at a door she could actually choose to walk through. In her hotel room, she sat on the edge of the bed in her emerald dress and her borrowed coat, and she put the card on the nightstand and she looked at it for a long, long time. Her phone buzzed. Once. Twice. She did not pick it up. Somewhere across the city, in a ballroom full of white peonies, Daniel Marchetti was dancing with his new wife. Somewhere across the city, Camille Whitfield was laughing, her head tipped back, a flute of champagne in her hand. Somewhere across the city, Vanessa Cole was telling anyone who would listen the story of the sad, quiet woman in the green dress who had slipped out during the ceremony, and can you believe it, had not even stayed for the reception. And in a hotel room on the 22nd floor, Isabella Cruz picked up the black card. She turned it over once, twice, in her fingers. She looked at the phone number. Outside, it had begun to snow. Isabella did not sleep. She sat on the edge of the bed until her legs went numb. Then she got up and walked to the window, and she stood there with her forehead against the cold glass and watched the snow come down on Michigan Avenue. It fell slow at first, then faster, the way snow does in Chicago when the lake decides to give you something to remember. By 2 in the morning, the sidewalks below her were white. By 3, the cars were moving in that careful, chastened way they moved when the city was reminded who was actually in charge. She thought about her mother. Her mother had been dead for 6 years, but Isabella still talked to her the way some people talk to saints. Standing at the window, she said, out loud, in a voice that cracked embarrassingly in the empty room, "Mama, I don't know what to do." Her mother did not answer. Her mother had never answered, not even when she was alive and Isabella was 12 and crying in the kitchen over a boy who had laughed at her in front of the whole 7th grade. Her mother's answer back then had been to put a plate of food in front of her and say, "Eat first, think later. A woman with an empty stomach makes stupid decisions." Isabella did not eat. She was not hungry, and in any case, the minibar offered only a $22 jar of cashews and a small tin of cookies that looked like they'd been baked during the Reagan administration. Instead, she picked up the black card again. She had put it down and picked it up and put it down, probably 15 times by now. The cardstock was starting to bend at one corner from her thumb. She turned it over. Silver numbers on black. Nothing else. No name, no address. Just a promise or a threat written in phone numbers. Almost certainly a mistake, he had said. For which one of us? Time will tell us. At 4 in the morning, her phone buzzed again. She finally looked at it. 7 missed calls, all from her cousin Marisol, who lived in Oak Park and had been, for the entire length of Isabella's engagement, the only person in her family who had actively disliked Daniel. There were also 11 text messages, 3 voicemails, and a single message from a number Isabella didn't recognize that just said, "Hey Iz, it's Camille. Please call me when you can." Isabella stared at that one for a long time. Please call me when you can. As if they were old roommates sorting out a utility bill. As if Camille had not, 3 hours earlier, slid a ring onto a finger Isabella had once believed was being saved for her. Isabella wondered, idly, if Camille had sent the message before or after the first dance. She wondered if Daniel had been in the bathroom. She wondered if Camille had sat on the edge of a hotel bed in her wedding dress and typed those words with the same thumb that still had Isabella's number in her phone, still had 6 years of text scrolling up into history. Brunch? Wine tonight? Can't wait to stand next to you at your wedding, Iz. I love you so much. Isabella did not cry this time. She had cried her allotment for the year, she thought. She had used it all up on a sidewalk in front of a jewelry store. She deleted the message. Then she deleted the whole thread. Every text, every picture, 6 years of a friendship, gone with one clean swipe and a confirmation tap. It did not feel like anything. She had expected it to feel like something, but it just felt like pressing a button. She put the phone down. She picked up the black card again. And this time, when she looked at it, she was not thinking about Lorenzo Viscari. She was thinking about Vanessa Cole, about Marjorie Pearl's and thin mouth, about the young waiter who had checked her dress and calculated whether she might need security, about the two bridesmaids who had walked past her shoulder like she was a column in the wrong place, about Daniel's mother, Angela Marchetti, who had once at a Christmas dinner looked at Isabella's plate and said, "Oh, you're eating all of that? How brave." She thought about those peonies, and she realized, with a clarity that was almost peaceful, that she was not a reasonable person anymore. A reasonable person had walked into that chapel tonight. A reasonable person had sat in the back and cried in private and left before the reception. A reasonable person had made a dignified exit, the way her mother would have wanted. And a reasonable person had gotten nothing. Nothing at all. Her dignity was, at this moment, sitting alone in a hotel room at 4 a.m. while the people who had broken her ate cake and danced and went to bed with each other. Dignity was a coat you wore when you had nothing else. Isabella had a coat now, a different kind. She picked up her phone at 11:17 a.m. She had rehearsed the call, sort of, in the shower. She had decided what she was going to say, and how she was going to say it, and what tone she was going to take. Cool, measured, businesslike. She was a lawyer. She could do businesslike. She dialed the number. It rang once. Isabella. Not a question, not a hello, just her name, said in the same low, careful voice from the night before, as if he had been sitting with the phone in his hand, expecting her. How did you know it was me? Because this number has had exactly one card in its life, and you are holding it. Oh. There was a small silence. She could hear in the background something faintly domestic, a coffee cup being set down on a saucer, a clock ticking. Somewhere very far away, a woman's voice saying something in Italian. I've thought about it, Isabella said. Yes. I'm saying yes. She had not, until that moment, been entirely sure she was going to. She had picked up the phone, telling herself she was just going to have a conversation, ask a few questions, clarify. And then he had said her name, and her mouth had opened, and the word yes had come out on its own, as if it had been sitting at the back of her throat all night. Lorenzo was quiet for a beat. Isabella, he said, before I respond, I want to ask you something. Okay. Are you saying yes because you have thought about it, or because you are angry? Both. That is an honest answer. Is it the wrong one? Another pause. She heard him just barely exhale through his nose, a soft, amused sound. No, he said. It is the right one. People who say yes to this kind of thing because they have only thought about it are lying to themselves. The anger is what makes it true. I only wanted to know you knew the difference. I know the difference. Good. So what now? Now, he said, I send a car for you. Where are you? She told him the name of the hotel. Be ready at 1, he said. Bring nothing. Everything you need will be provided. If there is something of sentimental value in your room, take it. Everything else, leave. I have a flight home tomorrow. Cancel it. My job, Isabella. His voice was gentle, but not soft. If you are going to do this, you are going to do this. We will call your office on Monday. You are a lawyer, yes? What firm? She told him. He made a small, neutral sound, the sound of a man filing away a piece of information. I know a partner there. He will understand. You know a partner at Brennan Webb? I know a partner at most places in this city. She did not know what to say to that. Isabella. Yes. One more thing. Okay. Tonight, at the reception, you will walk into that room with me. Not in front of me. Not behind me. Beside me. You will not speak unless you want to. You will not smile unless you want to. You will not do anything for their benefit. Do you understand? Yes. If at any moment you want to leave, you tell me, and we leave. I will not make you stand in that room 1 second longer than you can bear. You are not a prop, Isabella Cruz. You are the reason the whole thing is happening. Do you understand me? Something low in her stomach flipped. Yes. Good, 1 o'clock. He hung up. The car arrived at 12:57. It was the same black car from the night before, or one that looked very much like it. The same tall man in a black coat stepped out of the passenger side and opened the back door without a word. Isabella had put on the only other dress she had packed, a plain black wrap dress, nothing fancy, the kind of thing you wore to a weekday lunch with a client, and had folded Lorenzo's coat over her arm to return it. She had her handbag. She had the monogrammed handkerchief. She had, at the last second, decided to leave the emerald dress hanging in the hotel closet, as if abandoning it there would abandon some version of her along with it. The tall man nodded at her. Miss Cruz? Yes. Good afternoon. My name is Mateo. I'll be driving you today. Mateo was maybe 35, broad-shouldered, a face that was handsome in a blunt, working-man way. He did not look like the men in Daniel's world. He looked like a man who had been in actual fights, in actual bars, and could tell you, if asked, exactly which of his knuckles had been broken and on whom. She got in the car. It smelled like cedar again, and also, faintly, like leather polish and cold coffee. Mateo shut the door and got into the driver's seat. The car pulled smoothly into traffic. Where are we going? Isabella asked. Mateo's eyes flicked to her in the rearview mirror. Kind, she realized, with mild surprise. His eyes were kind. Mr. Vescari's house, ma'am. In Lake Forest. How long? About 40 minutes. Traffic's not bad today. The snow slowed everyone down this morning. Is he there? Yes, ma'am. Okay. Mateo glanced at her again. There's water in the seat back if you'd like, and a blanket if you're cold. I'm fine, thank you. Yes, ma'am. They drove in silence up the drive. Lake Michigan, a gray, restless thing to their right, the city receding behind them into a line of towers that looked from a distance like teeth. Isabella put her forehead against the window. She did not feel, she realized, afraid. She had expected to feel afraid. She had expected her hands to shake, her heart to pound, her stomach to turn the way it had turned every time she used to walk into a courtroom her first year out of law school. Instead, she felt still, almost flat, as if some part of her had already decided that whatever happened next could not possibly be worse than what had already happened, as if she had moved past fear and come out the other side, into whatever country was on the far side of it. Miss Cruz? She blinked. Mateo was looking at her in the mirror again. Yes. I've worked for Mr. Vescari for 11 years. Okay. I don't usually say things like this, but he's a good man to work for. I want you to know that. She did not know how to answer. She nodded. He nodded back, and that was the end of it. The house was not what she had expected. She had expected, she realized later, something ugly. A gated McMansion with gold fixtures, the kind of place mobsters had in movies, with pool tables and cigar rooms and a pit bull named Caesar. Instead, Mateo turned off a quiet road lined with old oaks and pulled up a long gravel drive, and at the end of it was a stone house that looked like it had been there for 90 years. Ivy on the north wall, a slate roof, old windows, the kind that were probably leaded glass, glowing amber in the late afternoon light. Behind the house, she could just see the lake. It was beautiful. That was the first wrong thing. It was not a mobster's house. It was an old, beautiful, serious house that might have belonged to a federal judge or a retired symphony conductor. The second wrong thing was that there were no visible men, no guards on the lawn, no big black SUVs in the driveway. Just a single gardener somewhere around the side, pruning a rose bush that had no business having any leaves on it in November. Mateo got out and opened her door. She stepped onto the gravel. Her heels sank slightly. Somewhere a dog barked once, softly, and went quiet. The front door opened. Lorenzo was standing in the doorway, in a black sweater and dark pants, no jacket, no tie. He looked different in the daylight, younger, maybe, or just more tired. There were lines around his eyes she had not seen in the dark car. He did not smile. Isabella. Hello? Come inside. It is cold. She walked up the stone steps. He stood aside to let her pass, and she stepped into a front hall that was all dark wood and old paintings and a staircase that climbed in one sweeping curve to a landing on the second floor. A woman in a gray dress stood in the hallway beyond. She was older, maybe 60, gray hair pulled into a low bun, a small silver cross at her throat. She did not look surprised to see Isabella. "Isabella," Lorenzo said. "This is Rosa. She runs this house." "Signorina," Rosa said. She gave Isabella a small appraising nod, the kind a doctor gives you before she tells you the news. "Hello. Rosa has prepared a room for you upstairs. You will want to change. There are people coming in an hour to dress you properly for tonight." "People?" "A stylist, 2 assistants, a jeweler, a hairdresser, and a woman who does makeup. They come from my wife's old circle. They are discreet. You do not need to tell them anything." "Your wife's old—" Isabella stopped. "You kept her people?" "I kept the house she built. The house runs on the people she chose." He said this matter-of-factly, without sentiment. "Some of them have been with me longer than she was alive." "Oh. Come." He led her up the stairs. Rosa followed, 6 steps behind, soundless. The landing opened onto a wide, wood-floored hall with 3 closed doors, and at the far end, a tall window that looked out over the lake. Lorenzo opened the first door and stood back. The room inside was enormous. A 4-poster bed, a sitting area by a fireplace that had, improbably, a small fire already going, a tall wardrobe, a dressing table, and on a stand next to the dressing table, covered in a translucent garment bag. She stopped in the doorway. It was a dress, a long dress. Even through the bag she could see it was silver and heavy and beaded, and the exact opposite of the emerald green she had worn the night before. "Where did that come from?" she asked. "A friend of mine has a shop on Oak Street. She owed me a favor. I sent her your measurements this morning." "You don't have my measurements." Rosa guessed. Rosa has a very good eye. Isabella looked at Rosa. Rosa gave her a small, unapologetic shrug. "Isabella," Lorenzo said. His voice was lower now, pitched for her alone. "Listen to me." She looked at him. "What is about to happen," he said, "is not about clothes, not about jewelry, not about how you look. That is scaffolding. That is armor. The actual thing, the thing I need you to understand, is this. In 1 hour, you will be standing in front of a mirror in this room. And the woman in that mirror is going to be the woman you walk into that ballroom as. Do you understand? She is going to be you, not a costume, not a character. You. I am not dressing up a woman to go play a role. I am giving a woman the tools she should already have had her whole life. Do you understand the difference? Because if you do not understand the difference, tonight will not work. They will smell it on you. These people, Isabella, these are not stupid people. They are cruel, and they are petty, and they are small, but they are not stupid. They can see a woman pretending to be someone else. They have seen it before. It is all they have ever seen. What they have never seen, what will break them, is a woman who is not pretending. A woman who has simply decided. She swallowed. Decided what? That she is not theirs to judge anymore. They looked at each other across the quiet of the room. "Okay," she said. "Okay. I can do that. I know you can." He turned to go. "Lorenzo." He stopped in the doorway. "Yes. Your wife. What was her name?" He was quiet for a second. "Chiara," he said. "Chiara. She would have liked you. Why?" "Because she also decided, once." He closed the door softly behind him. The people came at 2:30. They did not, as Isabella had half expected, treat her like a project. They did not cluck. They did not coo. They did not ask her anything about the wedding, or about Daniel, or about why an unknown woman was being dressed in the spare room of Lorenzo Viscari's house at 3 p.m. on a Saturday. They were, to a person, professionals. They did their work. They spoke to each other in quick, quiet Italian when they needed to. They spoke to her in English, only to ask permission. "May I lift your arm? May I pin this? May I take the earring off?" When Rosa brought up a tray with tea and small sandwiches, the stylist, a small, severe woman named Elena, actually pressed a sandwich into Isabella's hand and said, in accented English, "You eat. You are too thin from being sad. We cannot put you in a dress if you are thin from being sad." Isabella laughed. It startled her. She had not expected to laugh today. Elena looked at her, pleased, and said, "There. Good. Laughing is the first thing. Laughing is better than blush." By 5 o'clock, the woman in the mirror was not Isabella. Or rather, she was. But she was a version of Isabella that Isabella had never seen. Her hair had been pulled back off her face, severe and smooth, with one deliberate strand curving down along her jaw. Her eyes had been painted dark, the kind of dark that had nothing to do with flirtation and everything to do with warning. Her mouth was the color of old wine. The dress was silver, but not a shiny silver. An old silver, the color of a knife that had been used for a long time. It had a high neck and long sleeves, and it covered everything from throat to wrist to ankle. And somehow, because of the way it was cut and the way it lay against her body, it was the most naked-looking garment Isabella had ever worn. There was no skin. There was no cleavage. There was only the shape of her silver, standing very still in the mirror. Around her throat, Elena fastened a choker. It was thin, old-looking, a single dark stone set in a web of silver. "What is this?" Isabella asked, touching it. "It was his grandmother's," Elena said. "He sent it down this morning." Isabella's fingers stilled. "His grandmother's?" "Yes. It has not been out of the safe in 30 years. I can't wear this." "You can," Elena said. "He says." "Elena, I can't wear his grandmother's necklace to Signorina." Elena put a hand very gently on Isabella's shoulder. Her eyes in the mirror were kind. "I dressed his wife for 7 years. She was my friend. I will tell you something I have not told anyone in this house in a long time. When she died, he did not take her jewelry out of the safe. Not once. Not even to give to his mother. Not even to his sister, who asked. You are the first woman who is wearing anything of his family's since she died. Do you understand me?" Isabella did not answer. "He is a serious man, Signorina. He does not do things by accident. If he sends down this necklace, he is telling you something. I'm not supposed to say this to you, but I will say it, because I liked his wife, and I think she would want me to say it. Whatever this is tonight, whatever the arrangement is between you, he is already in it further than he is telling you. Do you understand?" "Elena, finito." Elena stepped back. "I have said too much. Now, stand. Let me see the shoes." Isabella stood. She turned. She walked once across the room. The dress moved with her like water. The shoes were silver too, lower than she'd expected, because Elena had declared that no woman on a war footing should be hobbling around on 5-inch heels. "You are not going there to be pretty, Signorina. You are going there to win. Winners wear shoes they can stand in." At 6:30, Rosa knocked on the door. "He is downstairs," she said. "It is time." Isabella took a breath. She looked at herself in the mirror one more time. The woman in the silver dress did not look afraid. The woman in the silver dress looked, in fact, like she was a little bored, like she had already seen how the evening was going to go and had decided to get it over with. Isabella did not know if that woman was really her, but she understood in a new way what Lorenzo had meant about decisions, about scaffolding, about the difference between pretending and deciding. She decided. She walked out of the room and down the hall and down the sweeping staircase, and at the bottom, in the dark wood foyer, Lorenzo Viscari was waiting for her. He had changed. Black tuxedo, perfectly cut, no flower in the lapel, his hair was combed back. The gray at his temples looked, in the warm light of the foyer, like something engineered rather than accidental, the kind of detail a painter would have added last. He watched her come down the stairs. He did not smile. He did not say anything complimentary. He did not make a face the way men in movies make a face, the kind of, "oh my God, you're beautiful" face that was supposed to make women feel like they'd won something. He just looked at her, steady, gray, evaluating, and then, when she was 2 steps from the bottom, he held out his arm. "Are you ready?" he asked. "No." "Good. Anyone who says yes to this is lying." She took his arm. His forearm under the tuxedo was warm and very solid. He smelled the way the coat had smelled, cedar and that darker thing, whatever it was. He led her, slowly, to the front door, where Matteo was holding it open. "Lorenzo," she said at the threshold. "Yes." "If I get in there and I can't do it, then we leave," he said. I already told you this. Just in case, I wanted to say it again. I heard you the first time. I am hearing you now. She nodded. He did not let go of her arm. They walked together down the steps to the car. The drive-in was quiet. Lorenzo did not small talk. Isabella found, after the first few miles, that she was grateful for this. He did not pepper her with reminders, or coach her, or run through scenarios. He simply sat beside her in the back of the car with one hand resting on his knee, and he looked out the window at the snow-crusted lake, and he let her be still. Once, about halfway in, he said, without turning, "His parents will be there." "Yes." "Do you want me to tell you about them?" "No." "All right. I already know them." "Yes." Another silence, then quieter. "His mother hated me." "That is not your fault." "No, but I used to think it was." "She is a small woman, Isabella." "She is a very rich woman, actually." "Those are not the same thing." She looked at him. He was still looking out the window. His profile, in the passing streetlights, was like something on a coin. She thought, not for the first time that day, "I have no idea what I'm doing." And then, very close to the back of that thought, "And I am going to do it anyway." The car pulled up in front of the Whitmore at 7:51. There was a valet stand. There was a red carpet, short and soft, the kind that hotels put out for expensive weekends. There were photographers, 3 of them, society photographers who had been invited by the Marchetti family to document the reception for whatever newsletter or magazine the Marchettis controlled the editorial board of. They looked bored. They were leaning against the stone wall, drinking coffee out of paper cups. Matteo got out, opened the door. Lorenzo stepped out first, then turned and offered Isabella his hand. She took it. She stepped out of the car and onto the red carpet, and the 3 photographers straightened up like a single body. The first one lifted his camera. He stopped halfway up and squinted. She watched his face change, watched him lower the camera an inch and turn to the man beside him and say something very quickly out of the side of his mouth. The second photographer looked. The third one pulled out a phone and began urgently texting. Lorenzo did not react. He tucked her hand into his elbow and he began to walk slowly up the carpet toward the lobby doors. Isabella walked with him. Her heels clicked on stone. She did not hurry. One of the photographers finally found his voice. "Mr. Vescari." Lorenzo turned his head a quarter inch and looked at the man. The photographer swallowed visibly. Sir, can we get a... Who is your guest tonight, sir?" Lorenzo stopped walking. He turned, slowly, fully, to face the 3 men. Isabella turned with him. She felt, with absolute clarity, every eye on the carpet, and every eye at the doors, and every eye inside the lobby beyond the glass, because people had begun to notice, the way people always notice when the air in a place goes cold. "My wife," Lorenzo said. He said it mildly, almost lazily, as if the photographer had asked him the time. The man holding the camera made a small, involuntary noise. Lorenzo turned back around. He began to walk again. Isabella walked with him. She did not smile. She did not look back. She felt the word wife land in the air behind her like a brick through a window. They had not, in fact, gotten married. There had not been time. They would not get married, actually, for another 9 days, in a civil ceremony at a judge's chambers with only Rosa and Matteo as witnesses. But Lorenzo had said the word out loud, in front of 3 photographers with 3 cameras and 3 very fast phones, and by the time Isabella and Lorenzo reached the lobby doors, the word was already moving through the building faster than they were. The doorman opened the doors. He was the same doorman from last night, the one in the gray coat who had held the door for someone else while Isabella had walked past him unseen. Tonight, he saw her. Tonight he inclined his head, a small stiff bow. The bow of a man who had just realized, very belatedly, who she was. She inclined her head back. They walked across the lobby. People stopped talking. A woman by the fountain actually put her hand over her mouth. A cluster of men in tuxedos by the coat check turned as one, and the one in the middle, a gray-haired man Isabella didn't recognize, said, loud enough to carry, "Vescari?" Lorenzo did not answer him. At the far end of the lobby, the ballroom doors stood open. A 5-piece band was playing something with a lot of saxophone. Light and laughter and the sound of silverware on china spilled into the lobby like bathwater out of a tub. A young woman in a black dress, a wedding planner by the headset and the clipboard, stood at the doors checking names off a list. Lorenzo and Isabella walked toward her. She saw them coming. Her face, Isabella would remember afterward, went through 3 separate expressions in under 2 seconds. The first was professional, welcoming, practiced. The second was a blank kind of confusion, the look of someone processing information that did not match her list. The third was something close to pure animal fear. "Mr. Vescari," the planner said. Her voice was a good 2 octaves higher than it had been when she'd greeted the couple ahead of them. I'm so sorry, sir. I don't have you on the—" "I know," Lorenzo said. "Sir, I am a guest of Isabella Cruz's." The planner's eyes went to Isabella's face, and then to Isabella's dress, and then, very briefly, to the stone at Isabella's throat. Isabella saw the woman understand what she was looking at in real time. A small muscle jumped under the planner's eye. "Of course," the planner said. She stepped aside. They walked through the doors. The ballroom was enormous. The ceiling was a galaxy of chandeliers. There were maybe 300 guests seated at round tables covered in white linen, their backs to the entrance, because the band was on the other end of the room, and the bride and groom were seated at a long head table beneath a canopy of, yes, of course, white peonies. It was the kind of room that ate sound. The entrance of a new couple, at this point in the evening, should have been essentially invisible. Dinner had been served. The dancing was starting. People were drunk enough that their attention had narrowed to the 2 or 3 people at their own table. A new arrival, under normal conditions, would have walked to their seat without anyone noticing. This was not normal conditions. The first table to notice them was a table of older men, seated near the doors, who looked up at the disturbance in the air, the way fish look up at a shadow on the water. One of them, a heavy-set man with a red face, actually stood. The table next to his noticed him standing. They turned. In less than 30 seconds, Isabella would time it, later, in her head. The silence had traveled across the entire ballroom. The band did not notice right away. The saxophone kept playing for another bar, and then another, and then the saxophone player, who had been watching the room while he played, trailed off. The piano followed. The drummer, the last to clock it, played a confused little half-beat, and then let his sticks fall silent. The ballroom went quiet. 300 faces turned. At the head table, under the canopy of peonies, Daniel Marchetti was laughing at something his groomsmen had said. He noticed slowly that the room had gone quiet. He turned his head. Isabella watched him see her. It happened in pieces. First, he saw a woman in a silver dress in the doorway, and he frowned, because he did not immediately recognize her, because she did not look like the woman he had expected to see. Then he recognized her. And his face— Isabella had known this face for 6 years, had kissed this face, had woken up next to this face, had watched this face on Christmas mornings and on beaches and across dinner tables in 7 different countries. His face did something it had never done. It went slack. The wine glass in his hand tipped. Red wine spilled across the white tablecloth. Camille, beside him, turned her head, opened her mouth to scold him about the wine, and then her eyes followed his, and she saw Isabella too, and the little preformed word on her tongue died in her throat. Isabella did not smile. She did not have to. She was still. Perfectly still. Silver and dark-mouthed, and standing beside a man whose name every older person in this room had just recognized and was, at this moment, frantically explaining to the younger ones under their breath. Lorenzo leaned down. His lips just barely grazed her ear, for the benefit of the room, not for her. "Isabella," he said quietly, "welcome to your reception." And he straightened and he began to walk, with her on his arm, into a room full of people who, yesterday, had not even seen her. The walk across that ballroom was the longest walk of Isabella's life. It could not have been more than 200 feet. The head table, under its canopy of peonies, sat at the far end of the room, past the dance floor, past the seated guests, past the bar. 200 feet. She had run longer distances in college on the treadmills in the basement of her dorm, half asleep, her headphones playing whatever had been on the radio. Tonight, each step took a year. She could hear her own heels on the parquet. Click, click, click. The band had not started up again. Nobody had signaled them to. The band leader, a black man in his 50s with a silver earring, was staring at Lorenzo the way a sailor stares at weather he has seen before and hoped he would never see again. The saxophone player had lowered his instrument. The drummer had put his sticks across the snare and was just sitting, waiting. The silence made every small sound enormous. Someone, at a table to Isabella's right, coughed. A server, carrying a tray of coffee cups, stopped in the middle of the aisle, realized he could not get around the new arrivals without bumping them, and stood there, tray frozen at shoulder height, waiting for a decision from a universe that was not providing one. Lorenzo kept walking. His pace was not fast. It was not slow. It was the pace of a man who was not in a hurry and was not running from anything. The pace of a man who owned the floor he was walking on. Isabella matched him. She did not know how she was matching him. Some part of her had taken over the basic mechanics of walking, and she was letting that part do its work while the rest of her just tried to breathe. She did not look at Daniel. She felt his eyes on her. She knew where he was, knew the canopy of peonies, knew the shape of the head table. But she didn't look. Lorenzo had said, in the car, the one coaching sentence he had given her all night: do not give him your eyes until you want to. So she did not. She looked instead at the empty space just ahead of Lorenzo's shoulder, at the middle distance, at the kind of point a woman looks at when she is on a runway and has been taught not to see the photographers. A table went past on her left. 8 people. She did not recognize them. They stared. A woman in her 60s wearing a cream suit had set her fork down on her plate with a small clatter. Another table. A man she half recognized, one of Daniel's lawyer friends from his old firm, was openly staring at the choker at her throat. Isabella could see in the corner of her eye the exact second his brain placed the stone. She could see the color leave his face. Halfway across the room, the silence began to unravel, not into noise, into something worse, into whispers. Whispers are not quiet. Whispers in a silent ballroom, 300 of them starting at once, sound like a river running under a frozen road. Isabella caught pieces. Is that? Can't be. Vescari, I swear to God, that's Lorenzo. I told you, I heard he was. No, honey, look at her dress. She's with him. But that's Daniel's ex. She felt Lorenzo's arm tighten, very slightly, under her hand. Not a squeeze, just a small adjustment. A reminder that she was not alone in this. She could feel the warmth of him through his tuxedo sleeve. It was the only warm thing in the room. At the edge of the dance floor, a very old woman in a navy dress stood up from her chair. Isabella recognized her, and her stomach dropped. It was Angela Marchetti, Daniel's mother. Angela was 72 years old, thin as a piece of wire, and had spent her whole life being the most important woman in any room she entered. She had inherited her money from her first husband, who had made it in pharmaceuticals, and she had married Daniel's father for his name, which was older than hers, and she had spent the 40 years since then making sure everyone she had ever met understood the transaction. She had told Isabella once, at a dinner, that her mother's cooking was charming for that kind of food. She had once referred to Isabella's law degree as her little hobby. Angela took 2 steps forward into the aisle. She was positioning herself, Isabella realized, to intercept them, to block the path, to force a public confrontation the way Angela had always forced every confrontation of her life, in the open, with witnesses, with cameras if she could arrange them. Lorenzo saw her. He did not slow down. He did not stop. He simply shifted his weight, very slightly, and angled his body so that when Angela stepped into the aisle, he was already past her, the narrow maneuver done so smoothly that a slower observer would have thought Angela had stepped back on her own. But Angela had not stepped back. "Isabella," she said. Her voice was high, tight, the voice of a woman who was, for the first time in a long time, not sure whether she was going to win. "Isabella, you can't just—" Lorenzo stopped walking. He stopped walking because Isabella had stopped. He had not told her to stop, but he had said, in the car, "We walk at your pace," and her pace, at the sound of Angela Marchetti's voice, had, without her deciding it, come to a halt. She turned her head. She looked at Angela. For 6 years, Isabella had been looked at by Angela Marchetti, looked at over dinner tables and across living rooms and down long hotel corridors, and once, memorably, from the other side of a hospital bed when Daniel had broken his ankle skiing in Vale. Angela had looked at her the way you look at a stray animal you do not intend to feed. Appraising, patient, faintly amused, waiting for it to go away. Tonight, for the first time, Isabella looked back. She did not say anything. She did not need to. She simply turned her head, and she let Angela Marchetti see her face, and she watched Angela's breath catch. "I'm sorry, Angela," Isabella said. Her voice, she would remember later, was low and calm and perfectly polite. "Were you saying something?" Angela opened her mouth, then closed it. Her eyes flicked to Lorenzo. They flicked back. I was only congratulating you, dear. Thank you. You look, thank you. I didn't realize, we didn't know you would. No, Isabella said. You didn't. She turned her head back. She began walking again. Lorenzo, without a word, walked with her. Angela was left standing in the aisle, her mouth still slightly open, her hands very white around her tiny evening bag. A waiter, coming the other way, had to step around her. They reached the edge of the dance floor, and there, finally, Isabella let herself look. Daniel had not moved from his seat. Neither had Camille. They were both still at the head table, side by side, under the peonies, and they were both staring, and their faces were wrong in the specific way faces go wrong when a person realizes in real time that they have done a thing they cannot take back. Daniel's mouth was slightly open. His left hand, his ring hand, was resting on the table next to a spreading red stain. His new gold band caught the light. He was, Isabella realized with something like clinical surprise, pale. Not a little pale. A lot pale. The color of paper. Camille was worse. Camille had put both hands in her lap, in the careful, composed way of a woman who had been trained her whole life to never, ever look ruffled in public. But her shoulders were up around her ears. Her eyes had gone very wide, and they kept flicking, small little jerks, between Isabella's face and Lorenzo's face, and back to Isabella's face. She was trying, Isabella could see, to do math, to work out what this was, to figure out whether this was a prank, or a mistake, or a fever dream, or whether her entire life had just, in the middle of her own wedding reception, become something else. The man at the next table over, a Marchetti cousin Isabella had met once, stood up abruptly, murmured something to his wife, and walked very quickly toward the restroom. "Isabella." The word came from the head table. It was Daniel's voice. He had cleared his throat. He was trying, Isabella could see, to do the thing he had always done in moments like this, to take control of a situation by being the person who first named it. It was a lawyer's trick. He had used it on her 100 times in 6 years. He had used it at breakfast when he was late, at dinner parties when he had drunk too much, in restaurants when he had forgotten her birthday. Isabella, a name like a leash. She had, in the past, always turned toward the sound of her name in his mouth. Tonight, she did not. She let him see the side of her face. She let him say her name into the air between them and let the air absorb it and give him nothing back. Lorenzo, beside her, did not react. He was looking with polite attention at the bandleader as if waiting for the band to resume, as if Daniel had not spoken at all. "Isabella," Daniel said again, louder this time, some of the nerve coming back into his voice. He was, Isabella realized, going to try to handle her. He was going to try to do what he had done 2 years ago in their bedroom when he had stood in the doorway and said very calmly, "I was going to tell you." He was going to try to make this about him. He stood up. He came around the head table. He navigated the chair of his bride, who did not take her eyes off Isabella, who was still doing the small, frantic eye math. He walked down the 3 shallow steps from the riser onto the dance floor. He was in his tuxedo. He had a red wine stain on his cuff. He crossed half of the dance floor before Lorenzo's hand moved. It did not move much. Lorenzo, beside Isabella, simply turned. He did not step forward. He did not speak. He turned his body, 1/4 turn, so that he was no longer walking with Isabella toward the head table, but was instead facing Daniel Marchetti across the empty parquet. He put his right hand in his pocket. That was it. Daniel stopped walking. He stopped walking the way a man stops walking when he has, in the middle of a thought, realized there is a cliff 2 feet in front of him. For a moment the two men looked at each other. Isabella watched Daniel's face try to hold itself together and fail. She watched him, in slow motion, realize where he was. She watched him understand, maybe for the first time in his life, that he was not the most important man in the room. She watched his shoulders, which had been pulled back in the way expensive men pull their shoulders back, sag half an inch, and then try, too late, to lift again. Marchetti, Lorenzo said, just the one word. Said the way a headmaster says the name of a student he is about to send home. Daniel's throat moved. Mr. Vescari, he said. Mr. Marchetti. I wasn't aware that you and... No, Lorenzo said. You weren't. Daniel, Lorenzo said. He stepped forward. One step, only one. But the effect was extraordinary. Daniel, who had been 6 feet 5 inches of hockey-playing prep school confidence his whole life, shrank half an inch. May I give you a piece of advice? It is a piece of advice I wish someone had given me at your age. Okay. You have just gotten married to a very beautiful woman. Yes, sir. I suggest, Lorenzo said, that you return to her. He said it mildly, almost gently. But the word sir, the word Daniel had used without meaning to, without deciding to, the word Daniel Marchetti had not said to another man in probably 15 years, hung in the air between them like a confession. Daniel turned red. He turned back toward the head table. He took one step, then another. He did not look at Isabella. He could not, Isabella understood, look at her. He was at this moment physically incapable of it. She watched him walk back to his wife, watched him sit down too heavily in his chair, watched his new wife put a hand on his arm in a gesture that was supposed to look supportive, and instead looked, to Isabella, like the hand of a woman steadying herself. Camille, Isabella would understand later, had already begun to lose her new life in that moment. Not in any dramatic way, not in any way that anyone else in the room could see, but the way a rope frays, the way a thin crack appears in glass. Lorenzo, Isabella said quietly. Yes. Thank you. For what? I don't know. For all of it. Come, he said. We will sit. He led her, not to the head table, not to any table at all, but to a small two-top tucked near the edge of the dance floor. It had not been set up for them. A waiter was already there, 2 chairs in hand, an apologetic expression on his face. Lorenzo nodded at him. The waiter set the chairs down. Another waiter appeared, as if from the floor, with 2 place settings, and laid them in less than a minute. They sat. People now could see them from every table in the room, which was, Isabella understood, the point. A bottle of wine appeared. Lorenzo glanced at the label, said something low to the waiter in Italian, and the bottle disappeared and was replaced, 30 seconds later, with a different bottle. This time Lorenzo nodded. The waiter poured 2 glasses and vanished. The band, after a long, uncertain pause, started playing again. Something slow, unoffensive, a kind of musical throat-clearing. The room, slowly, began to unfreeze. Conversations resumed at about a quarter of their previous volume. Knives and forks made careful, deliberate contact with china. A woman laughed somewhere and then clamped down on her own laugh, as if she had remembered, halfway through it, where she was. Isabella picked up her wine glass. Her hand, she noticed, was not shaking. She had expected it to be shaking, but she was suddenly outside of her body, or more inside it than usual. She was not entirely sure which. Lorenzo lifted his glass a quarter inch toward her. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "I don't know. That is fair. I think I'm going to be sick, actually, but not yet. Drink some water first, not the wine." She did. The waiter, invisible and efficient, had already put a glass of ice water at her place. She drank it. Her hand, she noticed distantly, was still not shaking. "Lorenzo." "Yes." "What just happened?" "You walked into a room, that is all. Daniel said sir to you." "Yes." "Daniel has never called anyone sir in his entire life. His own father does not get sir." "Yes." "He's afraid of you." "He is afraid of the idea of me. It is not the same thing." "It looked the same." "That is because he does not know the difference. Most people don't." She looked at him. He was, she realized, not looking at Daniel. He had not, since they had sat down, glanced once toward the head table. He was looking at her. Just her. With those steady gray eyes, unhurried, as if everything else in the room were a small distraction that he had already successfully filed. You're not watching him. No? Why not? Because he is no longer a problem. Isabella did not know what to do with that sentence. She set her water glass down. The silver dress made a small, expensive sound against the tablecloth. She looked, for a second, at the dark stone at her own throat in the reflection of the glass. His grandmother's. Your people, she said. They're watching him? My people are always watching everything. That's not an answer. No. She let it go. Across the room, she could see that Angela Marchetti had finally sat down. She had taken the seat next to her son, on his far side, and was speaking to him in an urgent undertone. Daniel was nodding, but he was not really listening. He kept, Isabella noticed, trying not to look in her direction, and failing. Every 30 seconds, his eyes would flick to her and then jerk away, the way a dieter's eyes flick to a plate of bread. Camille, beside him, was eating, methodically. Small bites. The way a child eats when she has been told she cannot leave the table. A server brought plates. Isabella had not ordered anything. She did not remember the menu even being described. But there was food in front of her now, some kind of beef, with roasted vegetables, arranged with the kind of architectural nonsense that only a wedding of this budget could produce. She picked up her fork. She was, weirdly, starving. Eat, Lorenzo said. I am. Good. Eat a lot. Tonight is long. And then, because she was Isabella, and she had not stopped being Isabella under a silver dress and a dead woman's necklace, she said, Is this what your first wedding was like? Lorenzo set his knife down. He looked at her across the small table. Something briefly passed across his face. Not anger, not embarrassment, something almost like surprise, and then, quick on its heels, something like respect. My first wedding, he said, was in a church in Palermo. I was 26. My wife was 24. Her family did not approve of me. My family did not approve of her. There were 40 people in the room. Half of them were armed. Someone's mother-in-law passed out during the vows. The priest forgot the bride's middle name. Afterward, we ate at a restaurant that had been closed to the public for the day, and a very old man played the accordion very badly, and my wife laughed so hard she cried, and her mascara ran, and I thought, I am going to love this woman until I die. Isabella was quiet. I'm sorry, she said. Don't be. No, that was a rude thing to ask. I didn't mean... Isabella. He picked up his knife again. I have not talked about that day out loud in 4 years. It was not a rude question. It was a good question. You may ask me any question you like. I may not always answer, but do not apologize for the questions. She nodded. She ate the beef. It was good. She had not expected it to be good. She had expected on the basis of the flowers alone that the food would be pretentious and cold. But somebody in the kitchen had done their job honestly. After a while, she said, She really would have liked me? Who? Chiara. Lorenzo's eyes flicked up, held hers. She would have liked you very much. Why? Because she had no patience for anyone who was pretending. I was pretending 10 minutes ago. I was pretending the whole walk across this room. I thought I was going to throw up. No, you were deciding. There is a difference. Elena said the same thing. Elena is correct about many things. Isabella almost smiled. Then, from across the room, a woman screamed. It was not a loud scream. It was the kind of scream you make when you have just burned yourself on a stove. Quick, sharp, cut off. But in a ballroom that was trying very hard to pretend to be normal, it cracked the room open again. Isabella's head snapped up. The scream had come from the head table. Camille was standing. Her chair was pushed back. Her napkin was on the floor. Her hand was covering her mouth. Daniel was sitting very still, his wine glass halfway to his mouth. He looked confused. An older man, one of Camille's uncles, Isabella thought, though she wasn't certain, was on his feet behind Camille. He was saying something quiet and urgent. Another guest, a woman, had hurried over from the next table. She had her phone out. The wedding planner, the young woman in the black dress with the clipboard, came running down the aisle toward the head table, holding her headset with one hand like it might blow off. Isabella didn't understand. She turned to Lorenzo. Lorenzo was looking, not at the head table, but at the entrance to the ballroom. Standing in the open doorway, flanked by the same wedding planner who had not let them in 20 minutes earlier, were three men Isabella had never seen before. One was in a dark gray suit, two were in navy blazers with small pins on the lapel. They were speaking to the planner. The planner was nodding, rapidly, her face the color of paper. "Lorenzo," Isabella said. "Who are they? Federal agents? What? Treasury, I would guess? Possibly FBI. I cannot tell from here." "What? Why did you—" "I did not," Lorenzo said. His voice was very calm. He set his fork down. He folded his napkin, once deliberately, and laid it on the table. "I had nothing to do with this." "Then why are they—" "I would guess," Lorenzo said, "that Mr. Whitfield is having a bad evening." "Camille's father?" "Yes." "Why would federal agents come to a wedding to talk to Camille's father?" "Isabella." He looked at her. "Camille's father is an investment banker. He has been an investment banker for 35 years. Nobody makes the kind of money Camille's father has made honestly. I have known this about her father for over 10 years. Everybody in this room over the age of 50 has known this about her father for over 10 years. The only thing I find surprising is that it took this long." "You're telling me they're arresting him? At his daughter's wedding?" "I'm telling you that they are here. I'm not telling you why. We will find out." Across the room, one of the agents had stepped into the ballroom. He was walking, not fast but not slow, toward the head table. Several people at the tables he passed were pulling out their phones. One man stood up and left very quickly, without looking back. Isabella saw him hit the doors and go through them and not slow down. Whatever he had at stake, it was apparently too much to watch. At the head table, a second scream. Not Camille this time. Her mother, a tall, thin woman in a silver dress very similar to Isabella's, who had been sitting quietly at the far end of the table, stood up and said, in a voice that carried, "What is happening? What is happening?" The agent reached the head table. He did not go to Daniel. He did not go to Camille. He stopped beside the chair of Camille's father, a heavy-set man named Theo Whitfield, who had been in the middle of a bite of bread pudding. Theo Whitfield looked up. His face did not, at first, change. The man had been a banker for 3.5 decades. He had trained his face for moments like this. But the skin under his eye on the left side twitched once. The agent bent down. He said something quiet. Theo Whitfield set down his fork. He looked for one small moment at his daughter across the table. Camille, who had sat back down, had her fingers pressed to her lips. Tears were standing in her eyes. Not pretty tears. Real ones. "Dad?" she said. "It's fine, honey." His voice was hoarse. "Sit down. Enjoy your reception. This is—" He looked at the agent. "This is a misunderstanding. We are going to clear this up." "Sir," the agent said a little louder, "you need to come with us now. May I bring my wine?" "No, sir." "May I finish—" "Sir." Theo Whitfield sighed, a deep, tired sigh. He stood up. He set his napkin on his chair. He did not put his hands behind his back. He did not need to. The agent did not cuff him. They were, at least, not going to cuff him in front of his daughter. Small mercy. There would be cameras outside. That was where the cuffs would go on. He walked, with 2 agents on either side of him, down the long aisle back toward the doors. As he passed Isabella and Lorenzo's small table, he glanced at Lorenzo. There was a second, barely a second, of eye contact. Theo Whitfield did not nod. He did not speak. But Isabella saw something pass between them. Not surprise, not hatred. A kind of resigned, mutual, adult Then he was gone. The ballroom exploded. Not literally. But the polite, managed quiet that had been struggling to hold the room together cracked, and conversations came back all at once, and people were standing and pulling out phones, and the band, which until this moment had been patiently continuing to play their soft, inoffensive background music, finally stopped. The saxophone player put his instrument down. The bandleader muttered something into his mic and signaled the drummer, and the stage went quiet. At the head table, Camille was crying. Really crying now. Daniel had his arm around her awkwardly, but he was not looking at her. He was looking, with a kind of dawning horror, at his mother. Angela Marchetti was saying something to her son. Her thin mouth was moving fast. Daniel kept nodding. His tan, Isabella noticed idly, had gone strange, green underneath. Isabella watched all of this, and slowly, she set down her fork. Lorenzo. Yes. Did you know this was going to happen? He did not answer her right away. He looked at her instead. Fully. For a long time. No, he said finally. I did not know tonight. I knew eventually. You could have warned them. I have been warning them for 10 years. Not with words. But they knew. Everyone knew. They knew. The Marchettis knew. That is why this wedding happened now, Isabella. They were trying to get it done before his indictment came down. A Marchetti-Whitfield marriage. Old money sealing the merger before the bleeding started. They thought they had more time. She stared at him. You're telling me this wedding, my wedding, the one that was supposed to be mine, was a business arrangement to shield her father from prison. It was not the only reason, I am sure. Daniel does love her probably, in his way. Or he loves what she is. But it was a reason, yes. And you knew. I knew they were trying to move fast. I did not know the federal timeline. Isabella was silent for a long moment. So she stopped. I was in the way. Yes, they needed him to marry her. They needed to get the wedding done. And I was the thing he had to get rid of first. Yes. That is why it all happened so fast. That is why he and Camille, 18 months, Lorenzo, they had 18 months behind my back. That is why the timeline was so... Yes. She pressed the heel of her hand against her forehead. I was a scheduling problem. You were a beautiful woman who was in the way of an older woman's plan. Yes. Angela. She laughed. It came out sharp and not entirely sane. Angela Marchetti, she said, broke my life because I was inconvenient. Yes. I thought he cheated on me because he loved Camille. He does love Camille, Isabella. I am sure he does, in whatever small way a man like him loves anything. But that is not why he did it on her mother's timeline. That is not why your engagement had to end in exactly the month it ended in. Come on. You are a lawyer. You do this every day for a living. You see patterns in other people's calendars. Look at the calendar. She was looking at the calendar. She had been looking at the calendar in some small back room of her brain since the moment Lorenzo had said investment banker. The dates were already lining up. The pre-engagement party, 21 months ago, that Angela Marchetti had pushed Daniel to move up by 3 weeks. The ring, which Daniel had bought without her, which he had picked out with his mother's help. The sudden bizarre insistence from Angela, 2 months before Daniel had broken it off, that Isabella consider converting for the wedding. A conversation that had made no sense at the time and had, she now understood, been a deliberate pressure point, a way to set up an argument, a way to make the breakup look organic. She had been managed. For 2 years, she had been managed, before she even knew there was a game. Oh, she said quietly. Oh, yes. That is so much worse. Yes. I'm going to be sick. Not here. Yes, I know, not here. They were silent for a minute. The ballroom was now a kind of managed chaos. Angela had stood up and was holding court at the head table, speaking rapidly to her husband, to the wedding planner, to 2 lawyers who had, from somewhere, appeared in neat, dark suits. Daniel was still sitting. Camille was gone. She had, at some point, fled. Isabella hadn't seen her go. Lorenzo, Isabella said. Yes. I want to go. Yes. Not home. Not to the house. I don't know where. I just want to leave this building. Yes. He stood. She stood. He did not offer her his arm. He did not need to. She walked beside him, and they crossed the ballroom the way they had crossed it 25 minutes before, and this time the whispers did not stop when they passed. The whispers chased them. The whispers climbed onto their shoulders. The whispers were not, anymore, about them. The whispers were about everything. About Theo Whitfield, about Daniel Marchetti, about what Angela had done and who had known and who was next. But some of the whispers were still about Isabella. They had a new shape now, those whispers. She could feel the shape as she walked. It was not the shape of look at her, the one Daniel left. It was the shape of look at her, the one who walked in with Lorenzo Viscari on the night the whole Whitfield family went down. At the door, the doorman, the same one in the gray coat, held the door for her. His face was very serious. He did not meet her eyes. He inclined his head instead deeper than before. Outside it was snowing harder. Matteo was already there with the car. Waiting. Engine running. Back door open. He had known, somehow, that they were coming out and exactly when, and he had pulled around without being called. Isabella did not ask how. She got in the car. Lorenzo got in after her. Matteo closed the door. The sounds of the street went away. In the dark of the back seat, Isabella put her face in her hands, and she did not cry because she was past crying, but she pressed her fingers against her eyes for a long time. Lorenzo did not touch her. He did not say anything. He simply sat beside her, with one hand on his knee, and let her have the silence. Finally, after a long time, she lowered her hands. "Take me home," she said. Lorenzo leaned forward and said something to Matteo. The car pulled out into the snow, and it drove north along the lake, and Isabella Cruz, in a dead woman's necklace, watched Chicago slide past in the glass and realized, with a kind of slow, heavy wonder, that the word home had just come out of her mouth for a house she had been inside of, in total, for exactly 3 hours. The word sat between them in the dark of the car for a long time after she said it. Home. Isabella heard it back in her own head. She heard how it had come out. Not shaky. Not joking. Just the word. The way someone says the word when they are too tired to pick a better one. She waited for Lorenzo to comment on it, or to gently correct her, or to say something dry and careful the way he said most things. He did not. He only watched the snow come down past his window, and after a while said, "Rosa will have made soup." "Soup." "Yes. She always makes soup on Saturdays. It is a habit of hers. You do not have to eat it, but there will be soup." "Okay." She leaned her head against the cold glass and watched the lake go past. She thought a little stupidly that she would probably eat the soup. The drive back up the drive was slower than the drive down had been. The snow was coming in sideways off the lake now, and the plows were out, and the red tail lights of the cars ahead of them made long, wet smears on the pavement. Matteo drove the way he always drove, which was to say, he drove like a man who had grown up in a bad neighborhood and learned the hard way that nothing good happens when you are in a hurry. The car moved north in careful, unhurried increments. Isabella, in the back seat, let herself fall apart. Not visibly. Her face did not do anything. Her hands, folded in her lap over the silver dress, did not move. But inside her chest, something that had been held very tight for almost 30 hours unclenched, slowly, and she felt her body begin to shake in small, invisible ways. She felt her teeth want to chatter. She set her jaw against them. "Lorenzo." "Yes. If I cry, I am going to be very angry at myself." "You do not have to cry. That is not how crying works." "No, you are right. That is not how crying works." He reached across the seat. He did not touch her, but he put his hand, palm up, on the leather between them. An offer, not a demand. She looked at it for a long time. Then, slowly, she put her hand in his. His hand was warm. It was the warmest thing she had touched in 2 days. His fingers closed around hers, firm but not tight, the way you hold the hand of somebody who has just come out of surgery. He did not squeeze. He did not stroke her knuckles. He simply held her hand, and he kept looking out the window. And he gave her the specific gift of not looking at her while she started, in very small, strangled gasps, to cry. She cried for maybe 4 minutes, no longer than that. When she was done, she wiped her face with her other hand because the monogrammed handkerchief was in her bag, and her bag was on the floor, and she could not be bothered to reach for it. "I'm sorry," she said. "For what?" "For," she gestured vaguely at her own face, "for all of this. I barely know you. You are not supposed to be watching me have a breakdown in a car." "Isabella." "What?" "I am the person who gave you permission to have the breakdown. It would be strange if I complained about it now." She laughed. A small, watery laugh. He kept holding her hand. At some point, he said quietly, "You should know. My phone has been ringing since we left the hotel." "Ringing?" "Yes." "About the wedding?" About a great many things, but yes, primarily the wedding, primarily you. Oh, by tomorrow morning the entire city will know the story. There will be a version in which I rescued you from a cruel ex-fiancé. There will be a version in which I arranged the federal raid myself to punish the Whitfields. There will be a version in which you and I have been conducting an affair for 2 years. None of them will be correct. All of them will help us. How do they help us? They give people a story. People who do not know what to do with a real event always reach for the closest story. It is human. It is useful if you are the one whose life is being storied. Lorenzo. Yes. I do not want to be storied. He was quiet a long moment. I know, he said. I am sorry, but you are. The house in Lake Forest was warm. Isabella had not expected to notice the warmth as a specific thing, but she did. She stepped through the front door and the air was different than the air outside. It smelled faintly of wood smoke and garlic and lemon, and it was warm in a way houses are warm when someone has been living in them all day, not in the way hotels are warm, which is warm in the way of machines. Rosa was in the front hall. She had a shawl around her shoulders, and her reading glasses were on a chain, and she had, Isabella noticed, a book in her hand. She had been waiting up. She looked at Isabella's face. She looked at Lorenzo. Madre mia, Rosa said, and left it at that. Rosa, Lorenzo said, she needs something to eat. She needs many things. Come, both of you. Kitchen. She turned and walked down the hall, not waiting to see if they followed. Lorenzo took Isabella's coat and hung it on a carved wooden stand beside the door. He unknotted his own bow tie and slid it off and tucked it in his pocket. He unbuttoned his top collar button. It was a small act, but it changed him somehow. He became, standing there in a tuxedo with his collar open, not a man walking into a wedding, but a man who had already been somewhere and come home. Go, he said. She does not like to be kept waiting. Aren't you coming? In a minute, I need to make a call. Now? At 10 at night? It is morning in certain places. She did not ask. She walked down the hall toward the smell of the kitchen. The kitchen was at the back of the house. It was enormous. An old kitchen with a fireplace at one end and a long butcher block table down the middle and copper pots hanging from a rack overhead. Rosa was already at the stove, ladling something from a heavy pot into a wide white bowl. She set the bowl down at the end of the butcher block, a piece of bread on a small plate beside it, a glass of water, a second, smaller glass of red wine. Sit, Rosa said without turning around. Isabella sat. Eat. Isabella looked down. It was a white bean soup, thick with escarole and sausage and something that smelled like rosemary. Her stomach turned over. She ate. She ate half the bowl before she realized she had not taken a breath. Rosa had sat down across from her, not eating, just sitting, with her hands folded around a small cup of coffee, watching. Slower, Rosa said. You will make yourself sick. Sorry. Do not apologize for eating. Eat slower. Isabella slowed down. Rosa. Yes. Did you know the Whitfield thing was going to happen tonight? Rosa took a sip of her coffee. No. Did he? No. If he had, he would not have taken you to that building, not because of the danger, but because it would have looked, what is the word? Choreographed. He does not like to look choreographed. Oh. He does not always know things, Signorina. He knows many, not all. He is not a god. He is only a man who pays attention. Okay, now eat. You are very thin. I do not know what you think you are doing, being so thin. I have not really been eating for a while. I know, I can see. We will fix that. Isabella ate. Halfway through the second half of the bowl, Lorenzo came into the kitchen. He had taken off the tuxedo jacket somewhere. He was in his black shirt and trousers, the collar still open. He sat down at the end of the butcher block, on Isabella's left, and Rosa, without being asked, got up and set a bowl of soup in front of him, and a glass of wine, and then sat back down across from them both. They ate, the three of them, mostly in silence, with the fire cracking at the end of the kitchen and the snow hitting the dark windows, and somewhere, deep in the house, a clock ticking. Rosa, Lorenzo said eventually. Yes. Go to bed. I will go to bed when I am tired. You are tired? I will be the judge of that. He did not argue. He only smiled, very briefly, over his wine glass and said, Yes, signora. Rosa clucked at him and stood up and began slowly to clear the table. She waved Isabella off when Isabella tried to help. Sit, sit. You are not staff. Sit. Isabella sat. After a while, Rosa said good night in Italian and disappeared down some back hallway that Isabella did not know the shape of yet. The kitchen went very quiet. The fire popped. Lorenzo refilled her wine glass and his own. Isabella, yes, I want to tell you something. Okay? He turned his wine glass slowly by the stem. He was not looking at her. He was looking into the fire. I told you, in the car last night, that you reminded me of my wife. I want to be more specific about what I meant because I think you may have misunderstood. Okay. I did not mean that you look like her. You do not. She was shorter than you. She had lighter hair. Her eyes were brown. You do not look like her. I do not think any two women ever look like each other, really. I think that is something men say when they are too lazy to know a woman as a whole person. Okay. What I meant was something more specific. I meant that when I saw you on the sidewalk last night, you had the look of a woman who is about to decide something. Chiara had that look once. I saw it on her face one afternoon in the kitchen of her mother's apartment. I was 25. She was 23. Her mother had just told her, in front of me, that if she married me, she would be dead to the family. Chiara stood up from the table. She walked to the window. She stood there for a minute, not crying, not arguing, just standing. And then she turned around and she said, in a voice I will remember until I die, Mama. Then I am dead. Pass the bread. Oh, I saw that same look on your face last night, before I even spoke to you. You were standing under an awning in the cold and you were about to decide whether to go home and disappear into your old life or to set fire to it. I wasn't going to set fire to anything. Yes, you were. You just had not realized it yet. She did not answer. She picked up the bread Rosa had left and she tore a piece off and she ate it because eating was easier than thinking. Lorenzo, she said. Yes. You said last night that you had a reason, beyond Chiara, that you needed a wife or something like one for the people who watch your household. Yes. What does that mean? He was quiet for a long time. Outside, a branch somewhere cracked under the weight of wet snow. I run, he said. A family business. I do not want to lie to you about what it is. You have figured out what it is already. Your father was a police officer. I imagine he told you, at some point, the kind of things he knew about certain names in this city. That is not necessary for tonight. For tonight, you only need to know this. The business has been in my family for 3 generations. My grandfather built it. My father kept it. I, when it was my turn, changed it, slowly, over years. I moved away from certain kinds of work. I moved toward other kinds. Real estate, shipping, legal lending. Some of it entirely clean, some of it not. Okay. This does not please everyone in my family. I have a brother. He is older than me by 2 years. He believes the business should be what it was 40 years ago. He believes I have gone soft. He believes, specifically, that since Chiara died, I have lost the, how do I say this? The weight, the presence. He believes I have become a man that other men can walk past without taking off their hat. Has that happened? Yes. And no. It has happened in small ways, ways that matter less than he thinks. But he is not entirely wrong about the shape of it. A man alone is a different thing than a man with a household. Everyone knows this. Nobody says it, but everyone knows it. When I walk into a room alone, some people stop hearing me the way they used to. They think, he will die eventually and have no one to pass it to. We only have to wait. So the wife changes the shape of me, in their eyes. It says, this man is building again. This man has a future to protect. This man is not a widower waiting for the end. Men like my brother understand that shape. It is the only shape they understand. So I am a signal. You are a signal, among other things. What other things? He looked at her. You are a person, he said. Do not pretend you do not know you are also a person to me. I would not have told you any of this if you were only a signal. A signal does not need to know why. She looked down at her soup. Lorenzo. Yes. Your brother. Is he going to be a problem? He is always a problem. For me. He did not answer immediately. He set his wineglass down. He folded his hands on the butcher block. His hands, Isabella noticed for the first time, had a small white scar across two of the knuckles of the left hand. Old, thin. It had been there a long time. I will not lie to you, he said. He will test you, not physically. He is not stupid, and he is not without rules. He will not hurt you. But he will want to see whether you are real. He will want to embarrass you, if he can. He will want to make you run. If he succeeds, he will have what he wanted, proof that I have made a bad decision. If he does not succeed, he will become slowly quieter about it. That is the best outcome I can give you. Not friendship, quiet. When? Not immediately. He is not here tonight. He is at a house in Michigan. He will come when he hears, probably within a week. Great. Isabella. Yeah, I know. It's fine. I can do it. I do not want you to do anything. I want you to be exactly who you were tonight. That is all. Who was I tonight? He looked at her. A long look over the fire. You were a woman, he said, who walked into a room where everyone had decided she was nothing, and by the time she walked out, they had all understood they were wrong. That is the woman you need to be in front of my brother. That is the only woman you need to be. You do not need to learn anything. You do not need to be anything more than what I saw tonight. Okay. Okay. They sat in silence a while. Her wineglass was half empty. She did not refill it. Lorenzo. Yes. My father. Yes. I have to tell him. Yes. He is going to take it very badly. Yes. He is going to think I have lost my mind. Yes. He might not speak to me again. Lorenzo considered this for a moment. Does he live in the city? Beverly, the neighborhood, not the one in California. I know the one you mean. He is retired. He lives with my aunt. My mother died 6 years ago, and he moved in with her sister. I would like to meet him. Lorenzo. Not tonight, not tomorrow, but soon. If you are going to stand at my side, Isabella, your father is going to find out from the news within 72 hours, if he has not already. I would rather he find out from you, and I would rather the next thing that happens is that he meets me in his own house with a cup of coffee, and I tell him face to face what I am and what I am not. He's a cop. He was a cop. I know what he was. He will not have coffee with you, Lorenzo. He might not. If he does not, then he does not. I will only have offered. That is all a man can do when he has married a woman into a father's objections. He can offer to sit in a kitchen and answer questions. If the father does not want to sit, then the father does not sit. But he will know the offer was made. She looked at him across the table. You are very used to this, she said. To what? To knowing what to do, in situations that are very strange. No, Isabella, I am not used to this at all. I am making it up as I go. You do not look like you are making it up. That is a skill. It is not the same thing. She slept that night in the bedroom at the end of the long hall. She had told Rosa, before Rosa went to bed, that she would sleep in her own clothes, but Rosa had already put a nightgown on the bed and 2 pairs of clean pajamas in the top drawer of the bureau, and a toothbrush, still in its packaging, on the edge of the sink in the bathroom. There was also, Isabella found, a small stack of books on the bedside table. A novel in English. A novel in Spanish, Cien Años de Soledad, her mother's favorite, which she had not read since her mother died, and a thin book of poems in Italian, which she could not read, but which she picked up anyway and held and put down again. She did not sleep for a long time. She lay on her back in the dark and watched the snow come down past the window. She thought about Daniel's face at the moment he had seen her in the doorway. She thought about Camille crying into her fingers. She thought about Theo Whitfield saying, "May I bring my wine?" She thought about her father, who was almost certainly asleep now in the front bedroom of her aunt's house on Winchester Avenue, with his bad knee propped on a pillow, not knowing yet that his daughter had married into something he had spent his whole career putting handcuffs on. She thought about Lorenzo's hand in the car. She thought about Chiara, who had said, "Mama, then I am dead. Pass the bread." She thought about the word home. Eventually, she slept. She woke at 7:40 to the sound of a lawnmower, which made no sense because it was November and there was 8 inches of snow on the ground. She went to the window. It was not a lawnmower. It was a snowblower far down the long driveway, being pushed by a man in a brown coat who was not the gardener she had seen yesterday. She watched him work for a minute. The sun was just coming up over the lake. The light on the snow was pale pink. There was a knock on her door. "Yes? Breakfast is downstairs when you are ready, Signorina." Rosa. "I'll be down in a minute, thank you." She showered. She put on a pair of jeans and a sweater that she found folded in the wardrobe, her size to within an inch. Of course her size. She did not want to think about the logistics of her size. She brushed her hair. She looked at herself in the mirror over the dressing table. Her face was tired but not broken. Her eyes were still her eyes. She went downstairs. Lorenzo was in the kitchen at the same end of the butcher block, reading a newspaper. A real newspaper. Paper. He looked up when she came in. "Good morning." "Morning. Coffee?" "Please?" Rosa, at the stove, poured her a cup without being asked. Black, strong. There was fruit on the table. There was a plate of small pastries. There was butter in a dish. There was a jar of honey. There was, inexplicably, a bowl of olives. "Olives," Isabella said. "Rosa is from the south," Lorenzo said. "She believes olives are a breakfast food." "Olives are a breakfast food," Rosa said. "I did not say they weren't. I am only explaining." Isabella sat. She drank her coffee. She ate a pastry. She listened to the snowblower in the distance. She watched Lorenzo turn the page of his newspaper, and she thought, in a small, strange, neutral way, "I live here now, apparently." "Lorenzo." "Yes." "The courthouse. Is it really next week?" "Tuesday." "And it's real?" "Yes." "No priest, no dress, just a judge, a piece of paper." "Yes, just a piece of paper. The kind of marriage my mother would have called a cheap one." "Was your first one?" "Yes, in a church." "Okay." She put the pastry down. "Lorenzo." "Yes." "I want to go see my father today." He folded the newspaper. "All right." "And I want to go alone." He considered this. "All right." "Don't send Matteo. I'll take an Uber." "Isabella." "No. I want to walk into my father's house by myself, the way I have walked into my father's house my entire life. I do not want to pull up in a black car with a driver. That is not how I am going to tell him this. I will not do that to him." Lorenzo looked at her for a long moment. "All right," he said. "Okay. But one thing." "What?" "You take a phone. A phone I give you. It has one number in it, mine. If anything happens, you call. And Matteo is at the house in 15 minutes. Not because I do not trust you, because I do not trust the city on the morning after a wedding like last night's." "Fine." "Good." Rosa at the stove made a small sound, almost approving. Isabella ate 2 more pastries. She drank a second cup of coffee. At 9:15, she stood. Her aunt's house was a yellow brick 2-story on a side street in Beverly, with a small fenced yard and a concrete driveway and a statue of a saint in the corner by the rosebush. She stood on the sidewalk for a full minute before she walked up the drive. It had been plowed already, badly, by her father. The plowing was bad because his knees were bad. He would have done it at 6 a.m. with the small shovel, slowly, refusing to ask her aunt's son to help, because her aunt's son was, in her father's private and unspoken opinion, a lazy man. She had grown up watching him plow driveways. She rang the bell. Her aunt opened the door. Tia Mari, a small woman with gray hair and a fondness for brightly colored cardigans. Today's was pink. "Ay, mija." "Hi, tia." Her aunt looked at her. Her aunt looked at her for a long, long time. "You come inside," Tia Mari said. "Your father is in the kitchen. He is reading the paper. He has not, he has not said anything, but I think he has seen. Okay, come, come. She hung her coat on the hook. She took off her boots. The house smelled, as it always did, of coffee and bleach, and the faint, sweet smell of the air freshener her aunt refused to give up. She walked through the living room, past the big television, past the photograph of her first communion, past the photograph of her mother that her father had moved to her aunt's house without asking when he had moved in, and she pushed open the kitchen door. Her father was at the kitchen table. He had the Tribune open in front of him. He had his reading glasses on. He had a cup of coffee at his elbow. He was, when she walked in, looking at page 4. He did not look up. "Papi," she said. "Mija." "Papi, sit down." She sat down, across from him. The way she had sat across from him every morning of her life from the age of 4 until the age of 18, and many mornings since. He turned a page, slowly, deliberately. "Papi, you are in this paper, Isabella." "I figured. Not on page 1, page 2. A picture from outside the hotel. You are in silver. You look beautiful, mija. I will say that." "Thank you. Your mother would have loved this dress." "Papi." "My friend Luis," her father said, still not looking up, "called me last night at 11:42. He said, 'Alberto, I have to tell you something. I was at a wedding in the city tonight. I saw your daughter. I saw who she was with.'" She was quiet. "I did not sleep," her father said. "I sat in this chair. I read this paper when it came. I am on my 4th cup of coffee. I have not cried, mija, because I'm too old to cry. But I thought about it. I will tell you honestly, I thought about it." "Papi?" "No, let me talk." "Okay." He closed the paper. He took off his glasses. He set them carefully on the closed paper. He folded his hands in front of him on the table. His hands had big knuckles. They always had. She had loved as a child his knuckles. "Isabella," he said, "I have been a police officer for 31 years. I know the name of the man in this picture with you. I know his father's name. I know his grandfather's name. I know the names of the houses they live in, the names of the places they eat, the names of certain streets where certain things have happened that I was not always able to prove. I know, you understand?" "I understand." "I have spent my whole life on one side of a line, mija, and that man has spent his life on the other side of it. I did not put handcuffs on him personally. We did not get that close. But I put handcuffs on men who worked for him. I sat across from mothers whose sons had died because of men like him. I have opinions, mija. I have many opinions." "I know." "And last night I spent 4 hours thinking about those opinions. 4 hours. In this chair. And then I thought about something else." "What?" "I thought about the night you came home from that house. From that apartment you had with that animal, 2 years ago. You called me. It was 2 in the morning. Do you remember?" "I remember. You were not crying. That was the part that made me afraid. You were not crying. You said to me very calmly, Papi, I need to come home for a few days. And I said, come. And you came. You slept for 3 days. 3 days, mija, you barely got out of the bed. And when I brought you soup on the 3rd night, you looked at me and you said, do you remember what you said?" "No." "You said, Papi, I don't know how I am supposed to be a person anymore." She looked down at the table. "I remember that now. I remember it every day. For 2 years. Every day I have watched you go to work and smile at strangers and do your job and come home, and every day I have thought, she is not a person. She is pretending to be a person. My daughter is still in the bed." Her eyes filled. She did not fight it this time. "Papi, last night," he tapped the paper. "Last night I looked at this picture and I saw, mija. I do not like what I saw. I do not approve of what I saw. I think you are going to make my life very complicated in ways I do not want. But I saw, Isabella, in that picture, in your face. I saw my daughter again. For the first time in 2 years, I saw my daughter." She was crying now, openly, not dramatically, just water on her face. "I do not know this man," her father said. "I do not want to know this man. But I will tell you something I did not think I would ever tell you about a man like him." "What?" "If he is the one who put my daughter back in her own face, then he is either the best thing that ever happened to you, or the worst, and I am too old to know which. I am only her father. I am not the one who gets to decide anymore. Papi, mija, listen to me. Listen. Okay, if this is real, if you stay with him, you will call me once a week, no less. You will come to this house for dinner once a month. You will let your tia Mari make you her mole. You will sit at this table in this kitchen, in this ugly yellow house, and you will be my daughter, mija. Whatever else you become, you will also still be my daughter. Do you understand? Yes, papi. And if he ever lays a hand on you, lays a hand, mija. You come home, you come to this door. I do not care what his name is. I do not care who he knows. You come to this door. He won't. You do not know that. I think I do, actually, papi. I know it doesn't make sense. I only just met him, but I think I know that. Her father looked at her across the table for a long time. His face was tired and very old, and she had not noticed until this morning how much older he had gotten in the last 2 years. Then he nodded, once, slowly. Okay, he said. Okay? Okay, mija, okay. I'm going to get you some coffee. Tia Marie, ven, bring a cup for your niece. Her aunt, who had clearly been listening from the hallway and was not even pretending otherwise, came bustling in with a mug. She put it in front of Isabella. She put a plate of pan dulce in front of Isabella. She put a hand on Isabella's shoulder briefly and left it there for a count of 3, and then took it away. Eat, Tia Mari said. Flaca. Everybody keeps telling me I'm too thin. Because you are, mija. Isabella laughed. It came out wet, but it came out real. She picked up a concha, and she tore off the sweet yellow top, and she ate it the way she had eaten them in her mother's kitchen when she was small. Her father opened the paper again. He put on his glasses. But he did not read. He was watching her eat over the top of the page, watching her eat in his sister's kitchen, watching his daughter eat bread and drink coffee and be, for a few minutes, simply a person in a chair in his house. After a long time, he said, without looking up, "Tell the man he can come for dinner, not this week, next week, Thursday. Tia Mari makes albóndigas on Thursdays." Papi, don't thank me. I'm not doing him a favor. I'm doing it because I want to look in his face. I want to see his face, mija, when I ask him certain things. Tell him that. Tell him Alberto Cruz wants to look at his face. Okay, I'll tell him. Good. He turned another page, casually. Like the conversation was over. Like the ceiling of her life had not just reformed, wrong side up, over her head. She sat at her father's kitchen table, and she drank her coffee, and she understood, in a slow, quiet, almost embarrassing way, that the things she had come here afraid of had not happened. Her father had not told her to leave. Her father had, in his stubborn, complicated, cop-shaped way, told her he saw her, told her he loved her, told her he would sit across a table from a man he had spent his whole life on the other side of, because she had asked him to. She thought for a second about Lorenzo, standing in the kitchen of his own house the night before, saying, "A father who will not sit, but he will know the offer was made." She thought also that Lorenzo had been more right than he'd known. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. The new phone, the one with one number in it. She pulled it out under the table. A single line on the screen. "Tell me when you are ready, and Mateo will come. Take your time." She looked at it for a long moment. Then she typed back with her thumb, very slowly, "Not yet. I'm going to stay for lunch. My aunt is making mole." She slipped the phone back in her pocket. She took another piece of concha. Her father, across the table, grunted, in his father's grunt, a grunt that had meant fine her whole life. Outside, the snow kept falling on Beverly, on the small yellow house, on the statue of the saint by the rosebush, on the whole ordinary Sunday morning of a whole ordinary neighborhood that had, overnight, without knowing it, become the in-law family of a man whose name nobody on this block would ever, out loud, agree to say. The albóndigas dinner with her father happened on the second Thursday. It was moved once because Lorenzo's brother flew in on the first Thursday, and Lorenzo could not be in 2 rooms at the same time, and for the kind of conversation Lorenzo was going to have with his brother, there was only one right room and only one right day. Isabella did not meet the brother, not that first time. She did not ask what the conversation was. Lorenzo came home from it at 2 in the morning and sat at the end of the butcher block in the kitchen, and drank a glass of wine without speaking, and then another, and then set the glass down and said, "He will be quieter now." "Just quieter?" "Yes. I told him I wanted quiet, not friendship. He is giving me quiet." "Is it real quiet, or is it the kind of quiet that is waiting?" He looked up at her with something almost like a smile. "You are learning quickly, Isabella. I had a good teacher. You had a very bad teacher. You had a week. A week with you is not a normal week." "No, it is not." He finished the second glass, and then he went up the stairs, and he slept in his own room at the other end of the hall, and she slept in hers. And that was, for now, still how they did it. The civil ceremony had happened on the Tuesday. She remembered almost nothing about it, except that the judge was a small, tired woman with a bad cold, and Rosa had cried a little, and Matteo had been serious the whole time, and Lorenzo had held Isabella's hand the way a man holds the hand of a woman he has known for 20 years, not the way a man holds the hand of a woman he has known for 11 days. Afterward, they had gone for lunch at a small Italian place on Taylor Street, where the owner came out of the kitchen and kissed Lorenzo on both cheeks and cried, a little, into his apron, and would not let anyone pay. Isabella had eaten a plate of pasta so good she had, for the first time in 2 years, forgotten, for an entire minute, that she had ever been engaged to anyone. That was the wedding. A courthouse, a tired judge, a plate of pasta, a housekeeper crying in the back of a cab. It was, Isabella thought afterward, probably the best wedding she could have imagined for herself, and she did not think that was a failure of imagination so much as a correction of one. Now it was Thursday, the second one, and she was in the passenger seat of a car she was driving herself, because her father had, on the phone that morning, said very firmly, "Mija, you drive yourself. You come through your own front door." So Matteo, over his patient objections, had stayed at the house, and Lorenzo, beside her in the passenger seat, had been looking out the window in silence for the last 7 minutes, because he had, she was beginning to realize, nerves. Lorenzo Viscari had nerves. "You're tapping your thumb," she said. He looked down at his hand. He stopped tapping. "I did not notice. You've been doing it since we got on the expressway." "Then I will stop." "It's okay. I like it. It's reassuring." "That I am nervous." "Yes." "That is a strange thing to find reassuring, Isabella." "Is it? My father has hated every man I have ever introduced him to. It is nice to know that at least one of them is going into it with realistic expectations." He smiled. Not the small, careful smile. A real one. It was rare enough that she noticed every time. "What is he going to ask me?" Lorenzo said. "Everything." "Be more specific." "He is going to ask you what your job is. Do not lie to him. He has been lied to by better liars than you." "I do not intend to lie to him." "Good." "He is going to ask you how old you are, even though he already knows. He is going to ask you whether you were ever arrested, even though he already knows. He is going to ask you whether you go to church. The correct answer is honest. If you are, say you are. If you are not, say you are not. "I am not." "Then say you are not." "All right." "He is going to ask you about Chiara." Lorenzo went still. "I'm sorry," Isabella said, "but he is. He'll ask. He'll do it carefully. He won't be cruel about it, but he'll want to know." "What does he want to know?" "He'll want to know if you are a man who is using me to replace a dead woman. He'll want to hear you say you are not." "I am not." "I know, but he needs to hear you say it." Lorenzo nodded once and looked out the window again. The exit for 95th Street was coming up. Snow was heaped along the shoulder in long gray-brown piles. A crow sat on top of one of them, eating something. "Isabella." "Yes." "If your father does not approve of me tonight, after all of it, after the answers, if he does not approve, he'll still let me come for dinner." "That is not what I mean." "I know what you mean." She put her blinker on. "If he doesn't approve, then he doesn't approve, Lorenzo. He is my father. He is allowed to disapprove of me. He has disapproved of me 3 or 4 times in my life. It has not once made me stop being his daughter." "Okay." "The question is whether you can sit through a dinner where he is polite to you but does not like you." "Yes, I can sit through that." "Good, because that is the most optimistic version of tonight." She signaled, she took the exit, and she drove the last 8 blocks to her aunt's yellow brick house. Her father opened the door himself. He had, Isabella saw, put on a button-down shirt. Not a tie. A tie would have been a concession too big for a man like Alberto Cruz, but a button-down shirt tucked in over a pair of dark slacks and the dress shoes he had last worn to her college graduation. His hair was combed. He had shaved that morning. She could see the small nick on his chin from where his hand had shaken a little. He looked at Lorenzo on the porch. Lorenzo looked back at him. For a long moment, nothing happened. The two men stood there, one on each side of the doorway, in the yellow light from the porch bulb, and the silence was the kind of silence that happens when two grown men of different generations and different countries and very different careers are deciding, in real time, how they are going to handle each other. Then Alberto Cruz held out his hand. Alberto. Lorenzo. They shook. Her father's grip, she could tell from where she was standing, was a little harder than it needed to be. Lorenzo's, she suspected, was exactly as hard as it needed to be, and not more. Come in out of the cold. My sister made albondigas. She has been cooking since 11 o'clock. I hope you like soup. I like soup very much. Good. He stepped aside. They ate in the small dining room. Her aunt had put out the nice placemats, the embroidered ones that had belonged to Isabella's mother, which never came out of the sideboard except on Christmas, and on the day Isabella had passed the bar. Tia Mari kept putting more tortillas on the table. She kept refilling Lorenzo's bowl before he finished the first one. She kept, when she thought no one was looking, giving him small appraising glances, which he pretended not to notice. Her father asked his questions, not in order, not like an interview. He moved around them the way a good detective moves around a suspect. He let the questions sit inside conversations about the weather, and about the bears, and about the price of gas, and about a roof repair Tia Mari was thinking about. Lorenzo answered all of them. Short answers when they were short questions. Longer, careful answers when the questions were larger. How old are you? 42. You have been arrested. Twice. When I was much younger. Once for public fighting, once for resisting. Neither was prosecuted. Chicago police? The second one. The first was in New York. I was 19. What are you paid for? Officially. I own 4 buildings in the Loop. I own a shipping company. I hold shares in several legal lending operations. That is what appears on my tax returns. Most of it is real. Most of it. Yes. Not all. No, sir, not all. Her father took a long sip of his coffee. He looked at Lorenzo over the rim of the cup. At least you will not lie to me at the table. I will not lie to you at your table. And at other tables. Alberto, I am going to say something with respect. I have been, in my life, at a great many tables. I have told the truth at some and not at others. I will not pretend to you that I am a saint. I am not one. I will tell you, because it is true, that I have never hurt a person who was not already inside the same work as me. And I have never been the kind of man who lifts a hand to a woman or a child. That line I do not cross. My father did not cross it. My grandfather did not cross it. I will not cross it. You are telling me this because of my daughter. I am telling you this because you asked. I did not ask. I was about to. Yes, I know, so I answered ahead. Her father grunted. It was the same grunt from the kitchen on that first Sunday. The grunt that meant fine. Isabella watched the grunt happen, and she watched her father pick up a piece of bread and dip it in the soup. And she understood, in a small, slow way, that her father had just let the biggest thing he was ever going to let happen. At this table, happen. Everything else in the evening, whatever else was said, would only be paperwork. Chiara, her father said. Lorenzo set down his spoon. Yes. Your first wife? Yes. Tell me about her. Lorenzo looked at his bowl. Then, slowly, he looked up. Not at Alberto, at Isabella. Just for a second. Then back at her father. She was 23 when I married her. She was 33 when she died. We were married 10 years. She wanted children. We could not have them. That was the thing we did not get to have. It broke her a little and it broke me a little. It did not break us. She died in a hospital on a Tuesday afternoon. It was a cancer that her mother had also had. She knew for a long time she was going to have it. She never complained. She said once, very near the end, Lorenzo, I am sorry, I'm going to leave you by yourself. And I said, Chiara, you are not leaving me. You are only going first. And she died about 8 hours after that. That was 4 years ago in June. Her father was quiet. You loved her, he said. Yes, I did. You still do? Yes. I will not lie to you. A person does not stop being somebody you loved because they are dead. No, they do not. I mention this because your daughter has asked me whether you were going to wonder if I am using her to replace Chiara. I want to answer before you ask. I am not. I cannot replace Chiara. Nothing replaces Chiara. Chiara is a room in my life that is still furnished. I walk past it sometimes. I do not live in it. I have chosen in the last 10 days to live somewhere else, in a different room, with your daughter. That is all I can tell you. It will either be enough for you, or it will not. Her father looked at him for a long time. He picked up his coffee. He took a sip. He set it down. My wife, Luz, died in a hospital also, he said, 6 years ago. A stroke. No warning. She went to the store in the morning, and in the afternoon she was gone. I did not live in our house after that. I moved in with my sister. I do not have another woman. I am 71 years old, and I am not going to. But I understand what you said. About the room, about the furniture, about the living somewhere else. Yes. So, all right. All right? All right. I have heard you. I do not like it. I do not like any of what you are. I do not like what you do for a living, and I do not like what it means for my daughter's life. But I have heard you, and I believe you, and that is a thing I did not know if I was going to be able to say tonight. So, pass the soup. Tiamari, more albondigas. The man is thin. Give him more. I am not thin, Alberto. In this house, everyone is thin until they have been fed 3 times. Eat. Isabella did not cry at the table, but she came very close. Later, on the porch, while Lorenzo was saying goodbye to Tiamari, her father put his hand on Isabella's elbow. Mija. Yes, papi. He is not a good man. I know. I did not expect him to admit that as honestly as he did. I didn't either, actually. A man who will tell you he is not a good man is not the worst kind of man. The worst kind is the one who thinks he is. Daniel was that kind. Daniel was many kinds, none of them good. He is, you have heard. I have heard. His mother is selling the summer house. His father is trying to separate his name from the Whitfields on paper. They are all going to be all right, of course. People like them are always all right. They will lose some furniture and some friends, and they will be fine. But that boy is not going to have the life he was promised. I will tell you honestly, Mija, I am not sorry about that. I know I am not supposed to say that, but I am not sorry. Neither am I. Good. Papi. Yes. Thank you for tonight. Do not thank me. Come back. Next month. I will. Bring him. Okay? And Mija. Yes. When you have a child, if you have a child, you bring that child to this house. You bring that child to this house, and you put it on my lap, and I do not care what his father does for a living. That child is a cruise. You understand? Yes, papi. Go. She went. In the car, Lorenzo did not speak for a long time. She drove out of Beverly. She got onto the expressway. She drove past the skyline in the dark, the buildings that had for years been the city of strangers who did not see her, and now were still that, and always would be, but differently. She did not live in that city anymore. She lived in a house in Lake Forest with a kitchen that smelled like garlic, and a fire that was, she suspected, going when she got home. Eventually, Lorenzo said, "Your father is a serious man." Yes. He was a better detective than he will ever tell you. Probably. He asked the right questions in the right order. That is a thing you cannot teach. Papi was always good. He loves you very much. Yes. Isabella. Yes. When he said the thing about the child, I saw your face. Oh. I am not pressing you. I am only saying, I saw it. I want you to know I saw it. Okay. Do you want that? She was quiet for a long time. A plow truck passed them on the left, throwing slush. I don't know, she said. I haven't let myself want anything in 2 years. I don't know what I want yet. That is fair. Do you want it? I wanted it once, with Kiara. When it did not happen, I stopped wanting it because it seemed cruel to her to keep wanting it. After she died, I did not want it for a long time because wanting it felt like a betrayal. And now, he was quiet. I do not know either, he said. I would have to let myself find out. I have not yet. Okay. The car was warm. The snow was light now, not the heavy stuff of the first night, just a thin, silvery swirl in the headlights. She drove. He watched the road. After a while, he put his hand on her thigh, briefly, just above her knee, and then took it away because she was driving, and he did not want to distract her. It was the first time he had touched her without a reason. She noticed. She did not say anything, but she noticed. 3 months later, a woman named Camille Whitfield Marchetti, that was the hyphenation the magazines had given her, though she had tried and failed to get them to just say Marchetti, sat down at a corner table at a coffee shop on Wells Street, and she waited. She had asked Isabella for the meeting, twice. The first ask in January, Isabella had ignored. The second ask in February had been different. Camille had written it on a piece of stationery, in handwriting, and mailed it to Isabella's old apartment, which still had a forwarding address. The note had said only, "Is. I'm not asking for anything. I just want to say one thing to your face, 1 cup of coffee, anywhere, anytime. I will come wherever you are. See." Isabella had sat with the note in her hand for a week. Then she had agreed. Lorenzo had not approved. Lorenzo had, in fact, said the word no out loud in the kitchen, which he almost never did, and then he had closed his mouth very deliberately, and he had said, "Isabella, this is your business. I am telling you I do not like it. I am not telling you what to do. I know. If she brings anyone, if anyone is within a block of that coffee shop who is not her, if you see a single Marchetti cousin within a mile, you get up, you leave. Okay. And Matteo will be outside. Lorenzo, in a car, across the street, not inside. He will not look at her. He will not speak to her. He will only be there. Okay. Now, at 2:10 on a Wednesday in February, Isabella walked into the coffee shop, and Camille looked up from the corner table. And the look on Camille's face was the look of a woman who had not slept properly in 100 days. She had lost weight. She had lost the good weight, the weight a healthy woman has on her face, the softness under the eyes. Her hair was pulled back. She was not wearing any makeup. She had a coffee in front of her that she had not drunk. Isabella sat down. "Thanks for coming," Camille said. Her voice cracked a little. She cleared her throat. I did not know if you would." "I didn't know either." "Do you want... I can get you a..." "I ate. I'm fine." "Okay." Camille looked down at her hands. "I'm going to talk for a minute," she said, "and then I'm going to leave, and I'm not going to ask you for anything. Is that okay?" "That's okay." Camille took a breath. "I slept with Daniel for 2 years before you knew." "I know. I slept with him because I was in love with him. That is the first thing I want to say. I did not do it as a game. I was not trying to steal him from you, or I was. But I also loved him. Both of those things are true. I know that doesn't fix anything. I just want you to know that I was not pretending." "Okay." "The second thing." Camille looked up. Her eyes were red. "The second thing is that I knew about the calendar." Isabella was quiet. "You knew about the calendar?" "I didn't know everything. I didn't know about my dad's. I didn't know that was coming. Or I didn't know it was coming that fast. But I knew that Angela wanted the wedding done before certain things. And I knew that meant you had to be out of the picture. And I went along with it. I want you to know that. I could have said, 'Daniel, wait. Tell her now. Tell her honestly.' I could have told him to tell you, and I didn't. I let him do it the way he did it. I let him drag it out. I let him lie. I let him hurt you, I watched him hurt you, and I told myself it was okay because I was going to get him at the end." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I can't not. That's not a reason." I know. Then Because I owe you the truth. Even if you don't want it, even if it doesn't matter, you gave me 15 years of your life. You were my best friend since we were 12. I sat at your grandmother's funeral. You sat at my brother's. I owe you the truth. Not in exchange for anything. I just owe it. Isabella looked at her for a long time. You're going to get divorced. Yes. When? Probably in the summer. His lawyers are trying to get the paperwork clean so his family can pretend it was always going to happen. And then I don't know. I don't have my dad's money anymore, or I have some of it. Whatever they haven't seized, I will be fine, but I will not be what I was. No. I'm not asking you to pity me. I don't pity you. Okay. Camille. Yes. I am not going to forgive you today. I didn't ask you to, and I'm not going to forgive you next year, and probably not the year after. I don't know if I'm ever going to forgive you. I want you to understand that. I want you to leave this table understanding that. Okay? Yes, I understand that. But I'm going to say one thing to you, and then I am going to leave. Okay? Isabella leaned forward, her voice dropped. You took my life, Camille. You and Daniel and Angela and my life in the city and my apartment and my engagement, and you took it and you held it underwater until it drowned and you walked away and you built your own life on top of it. And I want you to know that for a long time, for almost 2 years, I believed that was the end of my life. I believed I had been given one life and you had ended it, and I was just going to exist in the after forever. I believed that, Camille. That's what you did to me. You made me believe I was already over. Don't listen. Okay. And then, for reasons that have nothing to do with you and everything to do with me standing on a sidewalk on the worst night of my life and deciding to do something about it. For those reasons, Camille, I got my life back. And it is not the life I would have built. It is a strange life. It is a life with a lot of things in it I do not understand yet. It is a life I am going to spend the rest of my years figuring out. But it is mine. It is mine, Camille. And it is better than the life I was going to have with Daniel. It is better. I'm not saying that to be cruel. It is just true. It is a bigger life. It is a braver one. I am more of a person now than I was at my engagement party, Camille. And I will tell you the worst possible thing I could say to you as someone who used to love you. I should thank you. Camille started to cry, quietly. I'm not going to thank you, because you don't deserve that. You don't get to be a character in my redemption story, Camille. You do not get to be the reason I became stronger. I am not going to give you that. But if I were being completely honest, if I were being the kind of honest you are pretending to be with me right now, I would say that the thing you did to me broke my life open and made me find out what was inside of it. And what was inside of it was bigger than what I was building with him. That is true. I am telling you that because you asked for the truth, and I will give you the truth. I am telling you that because I am the person now who can tell you that without shaking. Camille was crying. Okay, she said. Okay, thank you. Thank you for telling me. Don't thank me. I won't. Sorry, I won't. Camille. Yes, I hope you figure out a life. I really do. I am not saying that to be generous. I hope you build something that is yours. Not what Angela wanted. Not what your father wanted. Something that is just yours. Because otherwise, you are going to spend the rest of your life being a woman who destroyed her best friend for a man who is already, I promise you, going to leave you next. And you deserve better than that, even you, even now. Isabella stood up. She did not hug her. She did not touch her. She did not even look back, really, as she walked out. She pushed through the door and into the cold, and she crossed the street, and she got into the passenger seat of the car where Matteo was waiting. And she looked through the window at the coffee shop, and she saw Camille sitting alone at a corner table, crying into her hands. Home, she said to Matteo. Yes, ma'am. The spring came in slowly. The snow melted in dirty stages, the way it always did in Chicago. An honest thaw for 3 days, a new storm for 1, a thaw for 3 more. By April, the gardens behind the house in Lake Forest were starting to show green. By May, Rosa was yelling at the gardener about the rose bushes again. By June, Isabella had her own law practice, quiet, working out of a small office above a bakery on North Clark. Only 3 clients, all of them hers, none of them Vescari business. Lorenzo had asked once whether she wanted him to send her clients. She had said no. He had nodded and never asked again. The brothers stayed quiet. The Marchetti family sold the house on the North Shore. Angela Marchetti stopped being invited to certain luncheons and then to certain charity boards, and then eventually to most things. She still had money. She still had the apartment on Astor Street. But a certain kind of social gravity that had held her in place her entire life had quietly stopped working. Isabella heard this from her cousin Marisol, who had a friend who cleaned at one of the clubs, and who had reported that Angela Marchetti had been seen last week, sitting alone at a two-top by the window, eating a club sandwich, and nobody had stopped at the table to say hello. Isabella did not feel triumphant when she heard this. She was surprised by that. She had expected for a long time to feel triumphant. She had rehearsed on sidewalks in November exactly how triumphant she was going to feel. But when the moment came, what she felt was mostly tired and a little sad, and underneath those, a small, clean, unfamiliar feeling she eventually understood to be neutrality. Angela Marchetti, it turned out, was not the size of Isabella's life. She had never been. Isabella had only thought she was, because Isabella had been too small in those years to see around her. Now she could see around her. Angela ate her club sandwich. Isabella went home. Brecken. One night in late June, Isabella sat on the stone steps of the back of the house, looking at the lake. It was one of those summer nights in Illinois that feel borrowed from somewhere else. Warm, soft, smelling of cut grass and old roses. No bugs yet because it was still early enough. The lake was flat. The light on the water was that low, slow gold that only happens for about 9 minutes a night. Lorenzo came out with 2 glasses of wine. He sat down beside her, not close, not far. He handed her a glass. "You're thinking," he said. "I'm always thinking." "You are thinking something in particular." "I'm thinking about my mother." She would not have liked any of this. Probably not. She would have been very polite. To you. She was always polite. She would have made you her mole. She would have asked you about your family, and she would have nodded in all the right places. And then, after you left, she would have turned to me and she would have said, "Isabella Cruz, I did not raise you for this." What would you have said? I would have said, "Mama, no. You didn't raise me for this. You raised me for something smaller, something safer. And for 30 years I was trying to build that. And when it broke, Mama, I did not know how to build it again. And I needed someone to tell me I did not have to. I needed someone to tell me that the life I had been building was not the only life." And what would she have said? I don't know. She would have been quiet for a long time, like my father was quiet. And then she would have said, "Mija, I still do not like it. I still wish you were not doing it. But if you do it with your eyes open. You do it without lying to yourself. And if the man ever makes you small, if he ever looks at you the way Angela Marchetti looked at you, you do not stay. You do not stay to be comfortable. You do not stay because it is easier. You stay only if he looks at you the way a man looks at a woman he would die next to. And if he stops looking at you that way, Mija, you leave before he notices. That is my rule. That was my rule with your father. That was my rule in every house I ever worked in. That is my rule for you." Lorenzo was quiet. "That is a good rule," he said. "Yes. I will try to not stop looking at you that way." "That is not something you can promise." "No, it isn't. I know that. I will still try." "Okay." They drank their wine. After a while she said, "I think I want to try." "Try what?" The thing. The other room. The one you were going to let yourself find out about." He did not look at her. He looked at the lake. "Isabella." "Yes." "Are you sure?" "No." "Good. Being sure would be a lie." "Probably." "Okay." "Okay." "Okay, we will let ourselves find out." She put her head, very carefully, on his shoulder. It was the first time she had done it. His shoulder was warm. He was, she had learned, warmer than most people. She had always run cold. He had always run warm. They balanced each other that way. After a while, he said, Isabella, yes, you saved my life, you know. I did not.
You did. I was not going to die. That is not what I mean. But there is a kind of living that is only waiting. A man who has lost his wife and does not want to find another life. A man who runs a business he does not love anymore because he does not know what else to run. A man who eats dinner alone for 4 years. I was that man, Isabella.
I was going to be that man for a very long time. And I saw you on a sidewalk on a night in November, and I thought, there's a woman who is about to decide something. And I made a decision too. I made it right there, in the car. Before I even spoke to you, I decided that I was going to try to be alive again, and I have been. Since the minute you sat in my car, I have been. She did not answer. She did not trust her voice. You did that, he said. You did not know you were doing it, but you did it. You saved mine too. No. You saved yours. I only opened a door. You chose to walk through it. That was you. Do not let me take credit for that. You opened the door. Doors are easy. The walking is hard. Both are hard, Lorenzo. Maybe. They sat on the stone steps for a long time. The gold left the water. The sky went purple, and then blue, and then dark. Somewhere in the house, Rosa was doing dishes. Somewhere in the driveway, Matteo was smoking the one cigarette he allowed himself each day. A neighbor's dog, 2 houses over, barked once at a rabbit, and then gave up. Lorenzo. Yes. One more thing. All right. I am not the queen of anything. No? I heard people say it once, at a party in January. Somebody pointed at me and said, that is the queen. I heard it. I almost laughed. And I don't want to be a queen. I don't want to be the thing your brother thinks I am, or the thing Angela Marchetti thinks I am, or the thing Camille thinks I am. I don't want to be a story. I want to be a woman. I want to be a woman who is married to a man she is figuring out. I want to be a woman who has a law practice above a bakery. I want to be a woman who has dinner at her father's house once a month. I want to be a woman whose husband, one day, maybe, learns to laugh out loud at the dinner table instead of just almost smiling at his wine glass.
I will work on the laugh. Work on it. I will work on it. That is all I want, Lorenzo. I don't need to be a queen. I had the crown on for one night. It was heavy. I don't want to wear it every day. Good. Then you will not. Good. A little later, she stood up. She held out her hand to him. He took it. He let her pull him up. He was heavier than he looked. She had never noticed that about him before. Come inside, she said. It's getting cold. I thought you said I ran warm.
I do. I run cold. It is my rule. Now come inside. They walked into the house. And somewhere in a city she no longer thought about, in a neighborhood she had stopped driving through, a man named Daniel Marchetti was learning, slowly, the shape of a life he had not prepared for. A life without his mother's money, without his father-in-law's name, without a wife who trusted him, without a best friend who had 2 years earlier stood in a doorway and stopped being the thing he had used to measure himself against. And somewhere in a 2-bedroom rental in Lincoln Park, Camille Whitfield Marchetti was learning, also slowly, to be a person without either of her 2 marriages, the one she had helped break and the one that had broken under her. She would get there eventually. She would meet somebody new. She would, in about 4 years, open a small business with her own money. She would never be the woman she had been at 28. Isabella would never see her again. And somewhere in a yellow brick house in Beverly, Alberto Cruz, who was 71 years old and had bad knees and had buried his wife 6 years too soon, sat down in his sister's kitchen and opened his newspaper, and he did not read it because he was too busy thinking about his daughter. About how, 3 weeks earlier, she had sat at this table and eaten 2 whole conchas and laughed at one of his bad jokes. About how, at Christmas, she had brought him a bottle of grappa from Italy that her husband had sent for. About how his wife, Luce, had said to him once, near the end, Alberto, if she ever loses her way, she will find it again. She has my head, remember that. And how he had forgotten that for 2 years, and how he had remembered it again on a Sunday morning in November, in the middle of a cup of coffee, when his daughter had walked into his sister's kitchen and been, for the first time in 2 years, herself. That is the thing, you see. That is the thing about a life that breaks. Most of them break because someone else broke them. That is always the first story. The one you tell yourself at 3 in the morning, the one you tell the bartender, the one you tell the mirror. Someone did this to me. Someone took this from me. Someone made me small. And usually, that is true. Usually, someone did. But the second story, the quieter one, the one you have to live a little longer to get to, is that the breaking was not the end of the life. The breaking was the end of a life. The one you had been building. The one that had been probably too small for you all along. And after the breaking, if you are lucky, and if you are stubborn, and if the right stranger stops his car on the right sidewalk on the right November night, you get to decide what comes next. Not who you are waiting for. Not who you are performing for. Not who you are trying to make jealous or sorry or afraid. Just what comes next. Isabella Cruz did not become a queen. That was a thing the magazine said briefly for a season, and then stopped saying because it was never really true, and the people who had said it moved on to saying other things about other women they did not know. Isabella Cruz became a woman, a specific one, a woman with a law office above a bakery, and a husband she loved for reasons that took her years to learn, and a father she called every Sunday, and a memory of another life that had been taken from her and that she did not, in the end, miss. She had thought for a long time that she would miss it forever. She did not. She missed pieces of it, her mother, a certain apartment, the girl she had been before Daniel. But she did not miss the shape of the life itself. The shape had never really fit. What had fit, it turned out, was not a crown, and not a revenge, and not a story. What had fit was a porch step at sunset, and a glass of wine she did not finish, and the shoulder of a man who ran warm when she ran cold, and a decision she had made once on a sidewalk under an awning when she was out of every other option, and so, for the first time in her life, she chose the option she had never let herself consider, the option where she was the one who got to decide.